Rain hammers the glass like God's own wrath, while Tina Vale bleeds onto marble worth more than most people's lives. The man she loves stands over her with a gun, and the worst part? She finally understands why he hired her to kill him 6 months ago. Cho Jae-hyun isn't just Chicago's coldest tech billionaire. He's the Mafia king who can't escape his throne. And Tina isn't just a maid. She's Nyx, the ghost assassin who failed the one contract that mattered. Now the mansion's burning, his grandmother's trap is springing, and the baby growing inside her is the only secret left between them. This is the story of how two killers tried to save each other from the monsters they were trained to become. If you're watching from your city tonight, drop a comment below telling me where you're from. I want to see how far this story travels. And hit that like button, because what comes next is going to hurt. Persian. The rain started 3 hours before Tina's world ended. She stood in the kitchen of the Cho estate with her hands submerged in dishwater that had gone cold, staring through the window at nothing while thunder cracked across Lake Michigan like bones breaking. The mansion sprawled behind her. 40 rooms of steel, glass, and silence so expensive it felt like violence. Somewhere upstairs, Cho Jae-hyun was playing Chopin on the Steinway Grand in the East Library, the melody threading through the halls like smoke from a gun nobody heard fire. She'd been working as his maid for exactly 5 months and 23 days. She'd been in love with him for 5 months and 22. The math was humiliating. Tina dried her hands and moved through the service corridors with the practiced invisibility of someone who'd spent years making herself disappear. At 28, she had the kind of face people forgot immediately. Sharp enough to be interesting, plain enough to vanish. Useful for a woman whose real name was attached to 17 confirmed kills across 4 continents and a file so classified that half the intelligence agencies hunting her didn't know she was a woman at all. Nyx. The name tasted like copper on her tongue. She'd buried that identity the day she walked through Jae-hyun's gates with forged references and a smile that promised nothing but competent silence. The plan had been simple. Get close, study his routines, wait for the perfect moment, then put a bullet through the brain of Chicago's most untouchable man and collect the $2 million her anonymous client had wired into escrow. Clean, professional, done. Except she'd made a mistake. She'd looked into his eyes. The piano fell silent. Tina paused in the hallway outside the library, her pulse doing something stupid and dangerous behind her ribs. Through the half-open door, she could see him sitting at the bench in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, ink-black hair falling across his forehead. The tattoos covering his arms, dragons and smoke and Korean script she couldn't read, looked like they were breathing in the lamplight. Cho Jae-hyun was 32 years old and moved through the world like a man carved from winter itself. Cold, beautiful, untouchable, also completely alone. That was the detail that had broken her. 4 months ago, she'd found him standing on the rooftop garden at 3 in the morning, staring at the skyline with the kind of stillness that came right before someone jumped. She'd brought him tea without asking, jasmine, the way he took it, and set it beside him without speaking. He'd looked at her then, really looked. "Do you ever feel," he'd said quietly, "like you're already dead, but your body hasn't figured it out yet?" She should have left, should have said something harmless and appropriate and vanished back into the service quarters. Instead, she'd answered honestly. Every single day. Something had shifted between them in that moment, some invisible wire pulled taut. Now Tina stood outside the library with her hands clenched into fists, trying to convince herself she could still finish the job. She'd killed men before. She'd killed men she liked. Hell, she'd killed a diplomat in Vienna while he was reading her poetry in 3 languages. This should be easy. It wasn't. The door swung open. Jae-hyun stood in the threshold, watching her with those dark eyes that saw too much. He didn't smile. He never did. But something softened at the edges of his mouth. "You're lurking," he said. "I'm working." In the hallway, staring at nothing. It's called strategic standing, very advanced maid technique. The corner of his mouth twitched. Close as he got to a laugh. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. "I need your opinion on something." She should decline. Should make an excuse and retreat to the kitchen where the knives lived and her cover story made sense. Instead, she followed him inside. The library smelled like leather and old paper, and the cedar incense Jae-hyun burned when he couldn't sleep, which, based on the shadows under his eyes, was most nights. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the lake, currently being beaten into submission by the storm. Lightning flickered, turning everything inside the room into a crime scene photograph. Jaehyun moved to a side table where a bottle of scotch sat next to two glasses. "You drink?" he asked. "Not with my employers. Good policy." He poured 2 fingers into each glass anyway and held one out. "Break it." Tina took the glass. Their fingers brushed. She felt it like voltage. "What did you need my opinion on?" she asked, trying to sound normal while her heart attempted murder. He nodded toward the piano. "The third movement. I can't get the tempo right. Too fast and it sounds frantic, too slow and it dies. I don't know anything about music. You know about rhythm, breathing, timing." His eyes locked onto hers. "Killing." The room went silent except for rain hammering glass. Tina's fingers tightened around the scotch. "What?" "You move like someone trained to end lives," Jaehyun said calmly, like he was discussing the weather. "Your weight distribution, the way you scan rooms, how you never sit with your back to a door." He took a sip. "I noticed the first week. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to grab the letter opener on the desk and put it through his throat before he could call security. Instead, she met his gaze. "And you didn't fire me." "No." "Why not?" "Because," he said quietly, "I hired you anyway." The world tilted. Tina stared at him. "What are you talking about?" Jaehyun set down his glass and pulled a phone from his pocket, not his usual one, something cheap and anonymous, and turned the screen toward her. On it, photographs. Surveillance shots of her in Prague, Rio, Berlin, each one time-stamped and annotated with clinical precision. Her real face, her real body, her real work. "I know who you are, Tina Vale," he said softly. "Or should I call you Nix?" The scotch slipped from her fingers and shattered against the hardwood. Jaehyun didn't flinch. "I know you're here to kill me. I know because 6 months ago, I placed a $2 million contract on my own life." His voice cracked, just slightly. "And I specifically requested you." Tina's brain was screaming static. "You're insane," she whispered. "Yes." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the damage living behind his eyes. "I've been insane since I was 7 years old, and my father started the conditioning. Do you know what that means? Psychological warfare designed to make disobedience physically impossible. They trained me like a dog, Tina, except dogs can run away." "Then run," she hissed. "You're a billionaire. Disappear." "I can't." The words came out broken. "The programming won't let me. I've tried. 8 times I've tried to leave this city, and every time my body shuts down. Panic attacks so severe I can't breathe. Migraines that feel like my skull's splitting open. Once, I made it as far as the airport before I collapsed and woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed with my grandmother standing over me, smiling. He was shaking now. Actually shaking. "So I hired the best killer I could find," he continued, voice raw. "And I prayed you'd be fast." Tina felt something inside her chest crack open. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. "Why the charade? Why let me fall in love with me?" The words hit like bullets. "Don't," Tina said. "Why not?" "It's true." Jaehyun's hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw with a gentleness that destroyed her. "You think I didn't notice? The way you watch me. The tea at 3 a.m. How you rearrange the books on my desk so the spines line up perfectly because you know chaos makes me anxious. Stop." "I was supposed to stay distant," he whispered. "Make it easy for you. But then you looked at me like I was human, and I—" His voice broke. "I couldn't do it. I couldn't stay away." Tina was crying. She didn't know when that started. "I can't kill you," she said. "You have to." "I can't. Tina. I love you too much to let you die." The confession hung between them like a lit fuse. Then Jaehyun kissed her. It wasn't soft, wasn't gentle. It was drowning and desperation, and 2 people who'd spent their entire lives alone finally finding someone who understood the specific shape of their damage. Tina kissed him back like it could save them both. They collided against the piano in a tangle of need and violence, and something that felt like grief. His hands were in her hair, her fingers digging into his shoulders hard enough to bruise. The storm raged outside while they burned through every rule they'd made to protect themselves. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Jaehyun pressed his forehead to hers. "This doesn't fix anything," he said. "I know." My grandmother will kill you if she finds out. Let her try. He laughed, breathless and broken. You don't understand. Madame Cho isn't just the matriarch. She's the empire. The syndicate answers to her, not me. I'm just the face she parades around to make it look legitimate. Then we leave. Tonight. Right now. I told you, I can't. Then I'll drag you. Tina. A door slammed somewhere in the mansion. They froze. Footsteps echoed through the halls, multiple sets, moving fast. Jae-hyun's expression shifted into something cold and lethal. Security wouldn't move like that. Something's wrong. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward a bookshelf on the far wall. His fingers found a hidden switch. The shelf swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. What is this? Tina demanded. Insurance. He shoved a key into her hand. If something happens to me, use this. It opens a safe deposit box at First Chicago Trust under the name James Wu. Everything you need is inside. Buses, passports, cash, evidence against the syndicate. Jae-hyun, promise me. The footsteps were getting closer. I promise, Tina whispered. He kissed her once more, quick and fierce, then pushed her toward the stairs. Go. Don't come back up until... The library door exploded inward. 6 men in tactical gear flooded the room with rifles raised. Not security, not police. Mercenaries. Jae-hyun moved instantly, grabbing the scotch bottle and hurling it at the nearest man's face. Glass shattered. The man went down screaming. Run! Jae-hyun shouted. But Tina was already moving. The assassin inside her, the one she'd tried to bury, woke up like a switch flipping. She grabbed the letter opener from the desk and drove it through the throat of the second man before he could raise his weapon. Blood sprayed hot across her face. 2 down. The remaining 4 opened fire. Jae-hyun hit the ground as bullets chewed through the piano, turning Chopin's instrument into splinters and screaming wire. Tina rolled behind the leather sofa, her mind calculating angles and distances with the cold precision of someone who'd survived worse. She came up firing the dead merc's pistol. 3 shots, 3 hits. Center mass. Professional. The 4th man got smart and threw a flashbang. The world turned white and silent. When Tina's vision cleared, Jae-hyun was gone. So were the bodies. And standing in the doorway, surrounded by a dozen more armed men, was a woman in a wheelchair with silver hair and eyes like frozen oil. Madame Cho. Hello, dear, the old woman said pleasantly. I see you've been busy. Tina raised the gun. Where is he? Safe. For now. Madame Cho's smile could fillet steel. Lower the weapon, child. You're talented, but you're not bulletproof. And I have questions. I'm not answering anything. Oh, I think you will. The old woman gestured. 2 men stepped forward carrying something between them, a tablet showing security footage of Tina and Jae-hyun in the library, kissing. You've complicated things terribly, Madame Cho said. My grandson was supposed to marry Yumi Nakamori next month, a union that would cement our alliance with the Nakamori-kai and expand our operations into the Pacific Corridor. Instead, he's apparently fallen in love with his maid. Her voice hardened. Who also happens to be a professional killer. If you hurt him, I would never hurt my grandson. I've spent 30 years protecting him from his father's mistakes. She leaned forward. But you, Miss Vale? You're a variable I didn't account for, and I don't like variables. Tina's finger tightened on the trigger. Shoot me, and he dies, Madame Cho said calmly. My men have orders. The moment my heart stops, Jae-hyun receives a bullet through the brain. So please, be smart. Tina lowered the gun. Better. The old woman smiled. Now, you're going to do exactly what I say. You'll continue working here. You'll smile. You'll serve tea. And when Jae-hyun marries Yumi in 4 weeks, you'll watch from the servants' gallery and remember that love is a luxury neither of you can afford. And if I refuse, then I'll have you killed, slowly, while Jae-hyun watches. Madame Cho's eyes glittered. Do we understand each other? Tina said nothing. Excellent. Oh, and Miss Vale? The old woman's smile widened. The wedding is going to be spectacular. I've invited everyone who matters, all the families, all the rivals. It'll be the social event of the year. Something in her tone made Tina's blood freeze. What are you planning? She whispered. What I've always planned, dear. Survival. Madame Cho gestured to her men. Take her back to her quarters, and post guards. We wouldn't want her getting any ideas about heroic rescues. As they dragged Tina from the library, she caught one last glimpse of the old woman's face and realized with bone-deep certainty that the wedding wasn't a celebration. It was a trap, and everyone invited was already dead. They locked Tina at the servant's wing like a dog in a kennel. The room was 8 feet by 10 with a single window overlooking the estate gardens and bars welded into the frame. A bed, a sink, a toilet. The kind of space designed to strip away dignity 1 hour at a time. 2 guards stood outside her door. Rotating shifts, never the same faces twice, and cameras watched from every corner with red eyes that never blinked. She'd been there for 6 days. 6 days without seeing Jae-hyun, without knowing if he was alive or already buried somewhere in the lake, with concrete shoes and a bullet in his skull. The not knowing was worse than any torture. Tina sat on the edge of the bed with her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the wall where she'd scratched a timeline into the plaster with a stolen screw. 28 days until the wedding. 28 days to figure out what Madame Cho was planning and how to stop it without getting everyone she cared about killed. The problem was simple. She cared about exactly one person, and he was somewhere in this mansion being God knows what while she rotted in a cell. The lock clicked. Tina was on her feet instantly, every muscle coiled tight. The door swung open and a woman stepped inside. Mid-20s, Japanese, beautiful in the way weapons are beautiful. Sharp, precise, lethal. She wore a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than Tina's entire year's salary, and smiled like she knew exactly how uncomfortable that made her. "You must be the assassin," the woman said pleasantly. "I'm Yumi Nakamori, the bride." Tina stared at her. "Get out." "No, I don't think I will." Yumi closed the door behind her and leaned against it, studying Tina with dark eyes that missed nothing. "We should talk. I have nothing to say to you." "Really? Not even about how you've been sleeping with my fiancé?" The words landed like a slap. Tina's hands clenched into fists. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please, Madame Cho showed me the security footage, the library, the kiss scene, very romantic, also very stupid." Yumi's expression didn't change. "You're in love with him." "And you're not." "Of course not. I've met Jae-hyun exactly 3 times, and 2 of those were business dinners where he barely spoke. This marriage isn't about love. It's about power, territory, money." She tilted her head. "You knew that, right? Or did you actually believe he was free to choose?" Tina wanted to hit her, wanted to wipe that calm, controlled expression off her face and make her hurt the way everything inside Tina was hurting. Instead, she forced herself to breathe. "Why are you here?" "Because we have a common problem," Yumi said. "Madame Cho is going to use this wedding to start a war. A real one. She's invited every major syndicate in North America under the guise of celebration, but what she's actually doing is setting up a massacre." "How do you know that?" "Because my father told me." Yumi's voice hardened. "He received intelligence 3 days ago from an inside source. During the reception, Madame Cho plans to assassinate the heads of the Bratva, the Sinaloa cartel, and the Triad leadership. She'll blame it on my family. The Nakamori-kai will be destroyed, and the Cho syndicate will expand into the vacuum." Tina's mind raced. That's insane. She'd ignite a continent-wide war. Yes, but she'd also consolidate power like nothing we've seen in 50 years. The survivors would fall in line or be eliminated. Yumi pushed off the door and stepped closer. "My father wants me to stop it. He sent me here with instructions to kill Madame Cho before the ceremony." "Then why haven't you?" "Because I can't get close enough. She's surrounded by security, and I'm being watched constantly." Yumi's eyes locked onto Tina's. "But you? You're already inside. You know this mansion. You know how to kill." "I'm locked in a cell. For now. But in 3 days, they're moving you to the main house to resume your duties. Madame Cho wants everything to look normal, stable. She needs the staff functioning for the wedding preparations." Yumi pulled something from her clutch, a small silver key. "This opens the service elevator to the private quarters. 3rd floor, east wing. That's where she sleeps." Tina stared at the key like it might bite her. "Why would you trust me with this?" she asked quietly. "Because you love him," Yumi said simply. "And people in love do desperate, stupid things. I'm counting on that." "What do you get out of this?" "My family survives. The war doesn't happen. And Jae-hyun," she paused, "Jae-hyun gets to live without being a puppet." "You don't even know him." "No. but I know what it's like to be a weapon your family points at enemies. Yumi's expression softened just slightly. I've been trained since I was 6 years old. Martial arts, poisons, seduction, everything a good daughter needs to serve the clan. So trust me when I say I understand exactly what he's going through. She pressed the key into Tina's palm. 3 days, Yumi said. After that, we're out of time. Then she was gone. Tina stood alone in the cell, staring at the key in her hand and wondering if she'd just been recruited into a suicide mission or handed the only chance she'd ever get to save the man she loved. Probably both. They released her on the 8th day. No explanation, no ceremony, just 2 guards unlocking the door and gesturing for her to follow them back to the main house like the last week hadn't happened. Tina walked through the corridors with her head down and her pulse hammering, waiting for the trap to spring. But nothing happened. The estate looked exactly the same. Marble floors polished to mirrors, artwork worth millions hanging on walls, silence so thick it felt like drowning. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, met her in the kitchen with a clipboard and a look that could freeze blood. "You're back on rotation," the older woman said curtly. "Same duties, same schedule, but you'll be working the main floor exclusively. No access to the private wings without direct orders." "Understood." "And Miss Vale?" Mrs. Chen's eyes narrowed. "Whatever you think you're doing here, don't. This house eats people like you for breakfast." Tina just nodded. She spent the next 2 days moving through the mansion like a ghost, serving tea and cleaning rooms and listening to fragments of conversation that painted a picture of something massive building toward explosion. The wedding preparations were in full swing. Caterers arriving daily, florists transforming the ballroom into something out of a fever dream. Security teams installing equipment that looked more like military hardware than event management. And everywhere, underneath the luxury, Tina could feel the violence waiting. She still hadn't seen Jae-hyun. That was its own kind of torture. Knowing he was somewhere in this building, alive, she had to believe alive, but completely unreachable. She'd tried asking the other staff, but everyone went silent the moment his name came up. Like mentioning him was dangerous. Like even thinking about him too hard might get you disappeared. On the 3rd night, Tina was delivering fresh linens to the guest suites when she finally caught a glimpse of him. He was in the East Gallery, standing in front of a massive window overlooking the lake, with his hands clasped behind his back. He wore a black suit that fit him like armor, and his hair was slicked back in a way that made him look older, harder, like the man she'd met in the library had been burned away and replaced with something carved from ice. Tina's breath caught. She wanted to run to him, wanted to grab his shoulders and shake him until the real Jae-hyun came back. But she forced herself to keep walking, to blend into the wallpaper like she'd been trained. Then he turned his head. Their eyes met. For exactly 3 seconds, the mask cracked. She saw the exhaustion underneath, the damage, the desperation of someone drowning in deep water with no surface in sight. Then his expression went blank again. He turned away. And Tina kept walking, with her heart shredding itself inside her chest. The key burned in her pocket like a live coal. Tina waited until 2 a.m., the dead hour, when even the guards got sloppy, before slipping out of her quarters and moving through the service corridors toward the private wing. The mansion was a maze of hidden passages designed to let staff disappear into the walls, and she'd spent the last 2 days memorizing every inch. The service elevator was exactly where Yumi said it would be. Tina slid the key into the lock. The doors opened with a soft pneumatic hiss that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. She stepped inside. The elevator rose smoothly, carrying her toward the 3rd floor where Madame Cho slept, surrounded by enough security to protect a head of state. This was insane. Suicidal. Even if Tina made it to the old woman's bedroom, even if she somehow got past the guards and the cameras and the door locks, what then? Put a pillow over her face and hope nobody noticed? The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a dimly lit hallway lined with artwork that belonged in museums and carpet so thick it swallowed sound. 2 guards stood outside a set of double doors at the far end, the only doors in the entire corridor. Madame Cho's suite. Tina pressed herself against the wall, thinking fast. She had no weapon, no plan, no backup. Just a key that got her this far and absolutely no idea what came next. Then one of the guards' radios crackled. "East perimeter, possible breach. All units respond." Both men exchanged looks, then jogged toward the emergency stairwell, leaving the hallway empty. Too easy. Tina's instinct screamed trap, but she moved anyway. She crossed the corridor in 3 seconds, tested the door handle and found it unlocked. Definitely a trap. She pushed inside anyway. The suite was massive, 20 feet of luxury stretching toward floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate. A hospital bed dominated the center of the room, surrounded by medical equipment that beeped and hummed in the darkness. And in that bed, small and fragile as a bird, lay Madame Cho. Except she wasn't asleep. "Hello, dear," the old woman said pleasantly. "Right on time." Tina froze. Madame Cho sat up slowly, her silver hair loose around her shoulders, eyes bright with something that looked like amusement. "Did you really think I wouldn't know? I've been watching you since the moment Yumi handed you that key." "Then why let me come?" "Because we need to talk, privately, without my grandson's emotions getting in the way." She gestured to a chair beside the bed. "Sit." "I'd rather stand." "Sit, child, or I'll have you shot." Tina sat. Madame Cho smiled. "Better. Now, I'm going to tell you a story, and you're going to listen very carefully, because your life depends on understanding what I'm about to say. I'm not interested in— 30 years ago, the old woman continued, as if Tina hadn't spoken, my son married a woman I didn't approve of. An American. Soft, weak. But he loved her, so I allowed it. And for a few years, they were happy. Then she got pregnant. Tina's hands clenched on the armrests. When Jaehyun was born, Madame Cho said quietly, my son did something unforgivable. He started training the boy. Not to be strong, not to survive, but to be a weapon. He used techniques borrowed from military psychological conditioning programs, trauma-based programming designed to create absolute obedience. By the time Jaehyun was 7 years old, he couldn't disobey a direct order from his father without experiencing physical agony. Tina felt sick. I didn't know, the old woman continued, her voice cracking slightly. Not until it was too late. By the time I discovered what my son had done, Jaehyun's mother was dead. Suicide, though I've always suspected murder. And the boy was broken. A perfect soldier, a perfect heir, and absolutely trapped. So you killed him, Tina said flatly. Your own son. Madame Cho's eyes went cold. Yes. I put a bullet through his brain while he slept, and I've never regretted it. But killing him didn't free Jaehyun. The conditioning was already embedded. I've spent 3 decades trying to undo what my son did, and I've failed. Every therapist, every deprogramming expert, every medical intervention. Nothing works. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're up against. The old woman leaned forward. That wedding isn't a trap for the other syndicates. It's a trap for Jaehyun. I've arranged for him to be captured during the chaos and taken to a private medical facility where a team of neurosurgeons will attempt to surgically remove the conditioning. Tina's blood went cold. You're going to cut into his brain? It's the only option left. The neural pathways created by the trauma are physical structures now. They have to be destroyed. Her voice hardened. And yes, he might die on the table, or wake up a vegetable, but at least he'd be free. That's not freedom. That's murder with extra steps. Then what's your solution? Madame Cho snapped. Let him suffer? Let him spend the rest of his life chained to programming that makes him want to die? He hired you to kill him, Miss Vale. Have you asked yourself why? Tina had. Every night, every moment she wasn't actively trying to survive. Because he's out of options, she whispered. Exactly. So I'm giving him one more. The old woman's expression softened. I know you love him. I can see it every time you look at him. But love isn't enough to save him. Only science can do that, and I need you to trust me. Trust you? You threatened to kill me. I threatened to kill you to see if you'd run. You didn't. That tells me you're serious about saving him. Madame Cho reached out with one skeletal hand and gripped Tina's wrist. Help me. The wedding happens in 3 weeks. During the chaos, you'll help me extract Jaehyun to the medical facility. Afterward, if he survives, you can both disappear. New identities, new lives. I'll make sure of it. Tina stared at her. And if I refuse, then I'll have you killed and I'll do the extraction without you. Either way, Jaehyun gets the surgery. The only question is whether you're there when he wakes up. The room went silent. Tina pulled her hand free and stood. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. After that, I assume you're an enemy. Madame Cho settled back against her pillows, suddenly looking every one of her 80 years. One more thing, Miss Vale. If you truly love my grandson, you'll ask yourself a very important question. What question? What's more important, Saving the man he is now, or giving him the chance to become someone new? Tina didn't sleep that night. She sat in her quarters with her back against the wall and her mind spinning through scenarios like a rat in a maze with all the exits sealed. Trust Madame Cho, the woman who'd threatened her, imprisoned her, and was planning to cut into Jae-hyun's skull with a scalpel? But the alternative was watching him suffer forever, or killing him herself and ending his pain the way he'd originally hired her to do. Both options felt like losing. By dawn, Tina still hadn't decided. She moved through her morning duties in a haze, serving breakfast to guests who didn't see her, and cleaning rooms that didn't need cleaning. Then, just before noon, everything shattered. She was in the main foyer arranging flowers when the front doors exploded inward. Not from a bomb, from a man. He walked through the entrance like he owned the world. 6'2", built like violence, with blonde hair and blue eyes, and a smile that had haunted Tina's nightmares for 5 years. Elias Kane, her dead fiancé, alive. Tina's vision tunneled. The vase slipped from her hands and shattered across marble, spraying water and lilies everywhere. Elias saw her. His smile widened. "Hello, Nix," he said pleasantly. "Miss me?" She ran, not away from him, toward the service corridors, toward weapons, toward anything that might give her an advantage because she knew with bone-deep certainty that whatever Elias was doing here, it ended with blood on the walls. He caught her in the kitchen. One moment she was reaching for a knife block, the next she was slammed face first against the industrial refrigerator with his forearm across the back of her neck. "Easy," Elias murmured in her ear. "We're not enemies anymore." "You're dead," Tina gasped. "Tehran, the safe house explosion. I saw the reports." "You saw what I wanted you to see." He eased the pressure slightly. "The CIA burned me, Tina. Left me to die in that safe house with a kill team on the way. So I made a deal, faked my death, started working for people who actually pay on time." "Who? Does it matter?" He spun her around, pinning her against the refrigerator with his body. "I've been tracking you for months. Imagine my surprise when I realized you were here, playing house with Chicago's favorite crime prince." "Let me go." "Not yet. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about." "Really? Not even about how you're planning to help Madame Cho turn her grandson into a vegetable?" Elias's smile turned sharp. "Yeah, I know about the surgery. I know about everything. The wedding, the syndicate war, the whole beautiful disaster." Tina's blood turned to ice. "How?" "Because I'm the one orchestrating it." He leaned closer. "Madame Cho hired my team to provide security for the wedding, which means I control who lives, who dies, and who gets dragged to that medical facility for experimental brain surgery. And right now, sweetheart, I'm thinking nobody lives. You're going to kill him. I'm going to kill everyone. The old woman, the syndicate heads, your boyfriend, everyone except you." His hand came up, fingers trailing along her jaw in a mockery of tenderness. "Because we're leaving together, tonight, just like we always planned." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'll make sure Jae-hyun dies slowly, and I'll make sure you watch." Tina's vision went red. She drove her knee into his groin with every ounce of strength she had. Elias doubled over with a choked gasp, and she followed up with an elbow to his temple that should have dropped him. It didn't. He caught her wrist mid-swing and twisted, forcing her to the ground. Pain exploded through her shoulder. "Still got that fire," he said, breathing hard. "Good. You're going to need it." Then he jabbed something into her thigh. A syringe, she realized too late. The world started spinning. "Don't worry," Elias said, his voice echoing from somewhere far away. "You'll wake up soon, and when you do, we'll be long gone from this place." "Jae-hyun," Tina whispered. "Forget him. He's already dead. Just doesn't know it yet." Then the darkness swallowed her whole. When Tina opened her eyes, she was no longer in the mansion. She was in a penthouse. Glass walls, city lights. Chicago sprawled below like a circuit board. And sitting across from her in a leather chair, watching her with those cold blue eyes, was Elias. "Welcome back," he said. Tina lunged for him. She made it exactly 3 feet before the chain around her ankle pulled taut. She hit the floor hard, vision exploding with stars. "Easy," Elias said. "You're safe here. No syndicate, no grandmother, no psychotic boyfriend, just us." "Where's Jae-hyun?" Tina demanded, her voice raw. "Still at the estate, for now." He stood and walked to a laptop on the coffee table, turning the screen toward her. "But you should see this." Security footage filled the display. It showed Jae-hyun in what looked like his private office, talking to someone off camera. The angle was wrong, the lighting harsh, but his face was clearly visible, and he was smiling. "This was recorded yesterday," Elias said. "Watch." On the screen, Jae-hyun's lips moved. No audio, but Tina could read the shape of the words. "The assassin is no longer a problem. Kill her whenever you want." Tina's heart stopped. "No," she whispered. "Oh, yes. Turns out your boyfriend's been playing you from the start. The whole 'I hired you to kill me' story? Beautiful misdirection. What he actually did was hire me to eliminate the one person who could expose his operation to the feds." Elias crouched beside her. "You, Nix. He marked you for death 6 months ago. Everything else, the romance, the tea, the late-night confessions, was just him keeping you close until I could get into position." "You're lying." "Am I? Then explain why he never told you about the medical facility, or why Madame Cho waited until now to reveal her plan, or why, in that footage, he looked so damn happy about ordering your execution." Tina stared at the screen, at Jae-hyun's smile, at the cold calculation in his eyes. It looked real. It looked exactly like the monster he'd claimed to be. "I don't believe you," she said, but her voice cracked. "You don't have to believe me. Believe the evidence." Elias pulled out his phone and showed her more footage, financial records, encrypted messages, surveillance photos documenting months of planning. Jae-hyun's been working with his grandmother the whole time. The wedding, the massacre, it's all real. But you were never part of the endgame. You were just bait to draw out any remaining intelligence operatives who might be watching him. Stop. And tomorrow night, during the ceremony, he's going to personally put a bullet through your skull. Unless... Elias's hand cupped her face. "You come with me. Right now. We disappear. Let them all kill each other and start over somewhere warm." Tina wanted to scream. Wanted to break his fingers and claw his eyes out and run back to the mansion to prove he was lying. But the footage looked real. "I need time," she whispered. "You don't have time. The wedding is in 48 hours. After that, everyone dies." His thumb brushed her cheek. "I know you loved him. I know it hurts. But he was never real, Tina. The only real thing here is us. What we had. What we could have again." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in her entire life, Tina Vale had absolutely no idea what was true anymore. "Okay," she finally said. "Okay, what?" "I'll leave with you. After the wedding. After I see him one last time." Elias studied her face for a long moment. Then he smiled and unlocked the chain around her ankle. "Smart girl. Get some rest. We've got a long night ahead." He left her alone in the penthouse with the city lights and the footage looping endlessly on the laptop screen. Tina watched it 27 times, and by the 28th, she'd spotted the edit. The frame glitch at 0:47, the audio desync, the way Jae-hyun's pupils didn't quite match the lighting. The footage was fake, which meant Elias was lying, which meant Jae-hyun was still in danger, which meant Tina had exactly one move left. She walked to the window and looked down at the city 40 stories below. Then she turned back to the laptop and did something she hadn't done since leaving the intelligence world 5 years ago. She sent out a distress signal. 3 minutes later, her old handler responded with 4 words. "Extraction team en route." Tina smiled. She wasn't going to the wedding as a prisoner. She was going as a weapon. And everyone who'd tried to use her was about to discover exactly how dangerous a ghost could be when you forgot she was trained to kill. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. The extraction team never came. Tina waited in the penthouse for 3 hours, watching the street 40 stories below for the tactical van that should have arrived within 20 minutes. She checked her phone obsessively, refreshing the encrypted app her handler had used to confirm the extraction. Nothing. By hour 4, she understood. They'd burned her. Again. The realization settled into her bones like ice water. Of course they had. She was a ghost, officially dead, operating under a fake identity while embedded with one of the most dangerous crime syndicates in North America. To the intelligence community, she wasn't an asset anymore. She was a liability. A loose end that needed tying off, which meant she was completely alone. Tina stood at the window and pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watching her breath fog the surface. Somewhere across the city, Jae-hyun was trapped inside that mansion with a grandmother planning to cut into his brain and a dead man orchestrating a massacre. And she had no weapons, no backup, and less than 48 hours to stop it all from burning down. The door opened behind her. Tina spun, every muscle coiling for violence. Elias walked in carrying takeout bags and coffee, looking relaxed, comfortable, like he hadn't kidnapped her and shown her manipulated footage designed to shatter what little hope she had left. "Hungry?" he asked pleasantly. "Go to hell." "Already been. Didn't like the weather." He set the bags on the counter and pulled out containers of Thai food that smelled good enough to make her stomach betray her. "You should eat. Long day ahead." "I'm not hungry." "Yes, you are. I can hear your stomach from here." He pushed a container toward her. "Pad see extra broccoli. Still your favorite?" The familiarity of it, the casual knowledge of her preferences, the way he remembered details from a life they'd shared 5 years ago, made her want to scream. Instead, she sat down and ate. Not because she trusted him, but because refusing food was stupid, and stupidity got you killed. She needed her strength for whatever came next. Elias watched her with those pale blue eyes that had once made her feel safe, and now just made her skin crawl. "You figured out the footage was fake," he said. It wasn't a question. Tina kept chewing. "I'm actually impressed. Most people wouldn't catch the edit, but you were always better than most people." He leaned back in his chair. "Want to know why I showed it to you anyway?" "Not particularly. Because I needed to see if you'd break. If your feelings for him were strong enough to override your training." He smiled. "And they are. Which means you're compromised. Emotional. Exactly what I need you to be." Tina set down her fork very carefully. "What are you talking about?" "The wedding, tomorrow night. You're going to walk into that ballroom, stand beside your precious crime prince, and when the shooting starts, you're going to freeze, because you'll be too busy trying to save him to remember how to save yourself." Elias's expression hardened. "And while you're dying for love, like some tragic opera, I'll be collecting the biggest payday of my career. Who hired you? Does it matter?" "It matters to me." He studied her for a long moment, then shrugged. "The Bratva. They want the Cho syndicate destroyed and Chicago opened up for expansion. Madame Cho's massacre plan? They know about it. They're counting on it. Because while everyone's focused on the ceremony, my team is going to hit the syndicate's data servers, financial accounts, and operational infrastructure. By the time the smoke clears, the Cho Empire will be a crater." Tina's mind raced. "And Jaehyun? Collateral damage. The Bratva doesn't care if he lives or dies as long as the syndicate burns." Elias leaned forward. "But I care about you. Which is why I'm offering you one last chance. Walk away. Tonight. With me. Let them all destroy each other and start fresh somewhere the past can't find us. You don't love me. No. But I remember loving you. That has to count for something." "It doesn't." His jaw tightened. "Then you're going to die tomorrow night, and I'm not going to save you." "I'm not asking you to." They stared at each other across the table while the city hummed below, and everything Tina had ever fought for crumbled into ash. Finally, Elias stood. "Get some sleep. I'll have someone bring you clothes in the morning, something nice. You should look good for your funeral." He left her alone in the penthouse with the chain-free ankle and the knowledge that she had approximately 16 hours to figure out how to stop a war, save a man who might already be dead, and survive a massacre orchestrated by the only person she'd ever trusted before Jae-hyun. No pressure. Tina didn't sleep. She spent the night systematically searching the penthouse for anything useful. Weapons, communication devices, structural weaknesses, anything that might give her an advantage. What she found instead was a laptop tucked into a drawer in the bedroom closet. Not Elias's main computer. Something older, a backup unit that hadn't been properly wiped. Tina booted it up and spent 3 hours cracking the password using techniques she'd learned from a Russian hacker in Prague who taught her how to break military-grade encryption while drunk on vodka. When the files finally opened, she understood why Elias had kept this machine. It was his insurance policy. Every job, every contract, every kill documented with clinical precision, photos, dates, financial transactions. And buried in a folder labeled Chicago, she found blueprints of the Cho estate marked with entry points, security camera blind spots, and a detailed timeline of tomorrow's massacre. But that wasn't what made her blood freeze. What made her blood freeze was the second folder, labeled Nick's Protocol. Inside, surveillance photos of her, hundreds of them, taken over the last 6 months while she'd been working at the mansion, sleeping, eating, walking the grounds. and in several, kissing Jae-hyun in the library. Each photo was annotated with timestamps and threat assessments, and at the bottom of the folder, a single document titled Final Solution. Tina opened it with shaking hands. Subject: Nix, Tina Vale. Status: Active liability. Recommendation: Termination during Chicago operation. Method: Sniper fire during ceremony chaos. Make it look like syndicate crossfire. Client: Bratva has approved additional 500,000 bonus for confirmed kill. Personal note: she was always too soft for this work. Better to end it clean. The words blurred. Tina closed the laptop very carefully and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing while her mind processed what she'd just read. Elias wasn't offering her escape. He was walking her to her execution. Every word, every gesture, every offer to run away together. All of it designed to keep her compliant and controllable until he could put a bullet through her skull and collect his bonus. The man she'd almost married 5 years ago had never loved her. He'd been waiting for permission to kill her. Something inside Tina cracked. Not broke, not shattered, cracked, and through that crack, something older and colder began seeping out. The part of her that had survived 3 assassination attempts, a bombing, and a knife fight in a Bangkok basement. The part that had earned the name Nix by being willing to do things other operatives wouldn't. The part that knew exactly how to kill someone and make it look like an accident. Tina stood up, walked to the bathroom, and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked the same. Brown hair, brown eyes, unremarkable features. But the person looking back at her wasn't the maid anymore, wasn't the woman in love. She was the ghost. And ghosts didn't forgive. But morning came with false brightness. Elias's associate, a woman with dead eyes and tactical gear, arrived at 9 a.m. with a garment bag containing a black cocktail dress, heels, and jewelry that probably cost more than Tina's entire year's salary. Boss says wear this, the woman said flatly. Car leaves at 6. Tina took the bag without comment. The woman left. Tina laid out the dress on the bed and studied it with a professional's eye. Designer label, expensive fabric, and most importantly, no weapons. Elias had thought of everything, even down to making sure she'd be unarmed and vulnerable when the shooting started. Too bad for him she'd spent the last decade learning how to kill with anything. The dress itself would work. Hemline above the knee, easy to move in. The heels were a problem, but she could ditch those. And the jewelry? Tina examined the necklace closely. Heavy, sharp clasp. If she snapped the chain, the individual links could be fashioned into makeshift cutting tools. Not ideal, but better than nothing. She showered, dressed, and spent the afternoon sitting by the window, watching the city and running scenarios through her head. The estate would be locked down tight, security everywhere, Elias's team in position, Madame Cho's people expecting an attack. And somewhere in that chaos, Jae-hyun. She had to get to him before the shooting started. Had to warn him about Elias, about the Bratva, about his grandmother's plan to cut into his brain. Had to somehow convince him to trust her when the entire world was designed to make trust impossible. Simple. Except for the part where it was completely insane. At 5:45 p.m., Elias knocked on the door. "Time to go," he called. Tina stood, smoothed down the dress, and checked her reflection one last time. She looked like someone going to a wedding. She felt like someone going to war. The door opened. Elias stood there in a tuxedo that fit him like a weapon, looking every inch the professional killer playing dress-up as a gentleman. His eyes traveled over her, clinical and cold. "Beautiful," he said. "Almost a shame." "Almost?" "Business is business." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" Tina took it. They rode the elevator down in silence. The lobby was marble and steel, elegant enough to make you forget you were standing in a building owned by Russian organized crime. A black town car waited at the curb, engine running. The driver didn't look at them. Tina slid into the back seat. Elias followed. The door closed with a soft thunk that sounded like a coffin lid. "Here's how this plays out," Elias said as the car pulled into traffic. "We arrive at the estate at 6:30. Ceremony starts at 7. During the reception, approximately 8:15, my team initiates. You'll feel the first shots from the East Gallery. 2 snipers, suppressed rounds, targeting the syndicate heads. That's your cue to get down and stay down. And Jae-hyun will be handled by someone else. Don't worry about him." "What if I do worry?" "Then you'll die worried." He pulled out his phone and showed her a live feed of the mansion. See that? My people are already inside. Servers, caterers, security. Half the staff you're going to see tonight works for me. The Cho Syndicate is already dead. They just don't know it yet. Tina watched the screen, watched workers moving through the mansion's corridors, setting up tables, arranging flowers, doing all the mundane tasks that made a wedding look like a celebration instead of a killing floor. And somewhere in that building, Jae-hyun was getting ready to walk into his own execution, unless she stopped it. The car turned onto Lakeshore Drive, heading north toward the estate. 20 minutes. That's all she had left. Can I ask you something? Tina said quietly. Elias glanced at her. Sure. When did you decide to kill me? Before Tehran or after? He was silent for a long moment. Then, before. The engagement was cover. You were always the job. Who hired you? Does it matter? It matters to me. Your own agency. CIA wanted you gone. You knew too much about their black operations in Southeast Asia, so they hired me to make it look like Tehran went bad. He smiled without warmth. I was supposed to detonate the safe house with both of us inside, but I got a better offer from the Bratva. More money. More freedom. So I faked my death and let the agency think you'd gone rogue. Tina's hands clenched in her lap. You ruined my life. I gave you a new one. You should be thanking me. For what? For teaching you that love is a weapon people use to control you. His hand reached over and covered hers. The difference between us, Tina, is that I learned that lesson early. You're still learning. She looked down at his hand, at the familiar calluses, the scar across his knuckles from a knife fight in Istanbul. Then she smiled. You're right, she said softly. I am still learning, and drove the sharpened necklace clasp through his thigh. Elias screamed. The car swerved. Tina was already moving. She grabbed the back of the driver's headrest and slammed her heel into the base of his skull. The man slumped forward. The car veered toward the guardrail. She lunged over the seat, grabbed the wheel, and yanked hard. They spun across 3 lanes of traffic in a shriek of rubber and horns. The car clipped a sedan, bounced off a truck, and careened toward the lakefront. Tina kicked open the door and threw herself out. She hit the pavement rolling, the cocktail dress shredding, skin tearing off her shoulders and arms as she tumbled across asphalt. Pain exploded through her body in waves. Behind her, the town car smashed through the guardrail and plunged into Lake Michigan. Tina pushed herself to her knees, gasping, bleeding, watching the car sink into black water. Then she started running. She stole a bicycle from a college student on the lakefront path. The kid protested. Tina shoved him aside and pedaled north like her life depended on it, which it did. Her dress was ruined. Her arms were bleeding. Her entire body felt like it had been fed through a wood chipper. But she was alive. And she had maybe 10 minutes before Elias's team realized she'd escaped. The Cho estate loomed ahead, lit up like a palace. Cars lined the driveway. Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, armored SUVs belonging to crime lords from across the continent. The wedding of the decade was about to begin. And Tina was about to crash it covered in blood and wearing a shredded cocktail dress. Perfect. She ditched the bike in the trees and approached the estate from the east side, moving through shadows like she'd been trained. Security was tight but predictable. Guards at the gates, patrols on the grounds, cameras covering obvious approaches. But Tina knew something they didn't. She knew where the service entrance was. The one staff used when deliveries came late at night. The one that wasn't on any official blueprint because it had been added during renovations 30 years ago and never properly documented. The one Jae-hyun had shown her 3 months ago when she'd asked about the mansion's history. She found the door hidden behind ivy and punched in the code he'd mentioned. His mother's birthday, he'd said, the one thing his father never erased. The lock clicked. Tina slipped inside. The service corridor was empty. Music drifted from the ballroom above. String quartet, champagne glasses clinking, the sound of wealth celebrating itself. She moved fast, staying low, following the path she'd memorized during her months working here. She had to find Jae-hyun before the shooting started. Had to warn him. A hand grabbed her from behind and slammed her against the wall. Yumi Nakamori stared at her with wide eyes. What the hell happened to you? The bride demanded. Where's Jae-hyun? Upstairs, getting ready. Tina, you're bleeding. I know. Listen to me. The wedding is a trap. Elias Kane is working for the Bratva. They're going to kill everyone during the reception and make it look like syndicate warfare. We have maybe 15 minutes before it starts. Yumi's expression went cold. How many shooters? At least 6 inside, maybe more outside as backup. Positions? East gallery, kitchen entrance. I don't know the rest. Yumi pulled a phone from inside her wedding dress, because, of course, she had a phone hidden in her wedding dress, and typed rapidly. My father's people are already positioned, but if Kane's team is inside, they're going to get massacred. Then we stop it. Yumi grabbed Tina's wrist. Can you fight? Always. Good, because I have weapons stashed in the bridal suite, and we're about to turn this wedding into a war zone. They ran through the corridors together, the assassin and the bride, both covered in blood now, both moving with the lethal grace of women trained to kill. The bridal suite was on the 3rd floor, accessible via a private staircase that bypassed the main ballroom. Yumi kicked open the door. Inside, spread across the bed like an arsenal catalog, were enough weapons to arm a small military unit. Pistols, knives, tactical gear, body armor. I don't do anything unprepared, Yumi said grimly. Tina grabbed a Glock, checked the magazine, and shoved 2 spare mags into what was left of her dress. The weight felt good. Familiar. Like coming home after being lost for too long. Where's Jae-hyun? She asked. East wing, private dressing room, but Tina... Yumi hesitated. There's something you need to know. Tell me fast. His grandmother moved up the surgery. It's happening tonight, after the ceremony. They're taking him directly from the ballroom to the medical facility. Tina's blood went cold. Why? Because she knows about Kane, about the Bratva, about everything. And she's decided that the only way to save Jae-hyun is to complete the operation before the shooting starts. Yumi's expression was grave. She's gambling that the chaos will provide cover for the extraction. That's insane. That's survival. Tina stared at her. You knew. This whole time, you knew about the surgery. Yes. And you didn't tell me. Because I wasn't sure whose side you were on. Yumi loaded her own weapon with practiced efficiency. But now I am. So here's the deal. We stop Kane's people. We survive the massacre. And then we decide together what happens to Jae-hyun. Deal? It wasn't a deal. It was a suicide pact. Tina nodded anyway. Deal. They moved back into the corridor, weapons ready, 2 women dressed for a wedding and armed for war. The string quartet was playing something classical and beautiful. Guests were laughing. The ceremony was about to begin. And somewhere in this mansion, Cho Jae-hyun was being dressed up like a sacrificial lamb, while his grandmother prepared to cut into his brain and everyone he'd ever known prepared to kill each other. Tina and Yumi reached the East Wing corridor just as the first gunshot echoed through the mansion. Then all hell broke loose. The windows exploded inward in a shower of glass. Screams erupted from the ballroom, more gunfire, automatic weapons, professional shooters, the sound of a coordinated assault tearing through the estate like a hurricane. They started early, Yumi hissed. Kane must have known we'd try something. Then we adapt. You get Jae-hyun. I'll hold the corridor. Yumi, Iki, go! Tina ran. The East Wing was chaos. Guards were scrambling, guests were screaming, and smoke was already filling the hallways from flash grenades. She could hear Elias's voice over someone's radio. He'd survived the crash, of course he had. Men like him always survived. Barking orders to his team. Target the syndicate heads first, then the old woman. The heir is secondary, and if you see Nix, put her down. Nix. The name echoed in her skull like a bell. Tina kicked open the dressing room door. Jae-hyun stood in front of a mirror, half dressed in a tuxedo, staring at his reflection like he was already dead. 2 of Madame Cho's guards flanked him, weapons drawn. He turned when she entered. Their eyes met. And for one perfect, terrible moment, the entire world stopped. Tina, he whispered. Then the guards raised their guns. She's not cleared, one of them said. Madame's orders. Nobody sees the heir until after... Tina shot them both. Center mass, professional, clean. They dropped. Jae-hyun stared at her like she'd just torn open reality itself. We're leaving, Tina said. Right now. Before your grandmother cuts into your brain and Elias Kane turns this mansion into a graveyard. What are you talking about? Your grandmother is planning to surgically remove your conditioning. Tonight. She thinks it's the only way to save you. And she's wrong. The procedure will kill you or destroy you. And I'm not letting that happen. Tina, you don't understand. I understand that I love you. I understand that you hired me to kill you because you thought you had no other options. And I understand that I'm done letting other people decide whether you live or die. She grabbed his hand. So you're coming with me, and we're going to find a third option that doesn't involve brain surgery or bullets. There is no third option. Then we'll make one. More gunfire erupted somewhere below. The building shook. Something exploded. Probably a grenade. Jaehyun looked at her bleeding arms, her shredded dress, her wild eyes. Then he smiled. Actually smiled. Okay, he said quietly. Okay? Okay. He grabbed a jacket from the chair and shrugged it on. Where are we going? I have absolutely no idea. Good. I'm tired of plans. They ran into the corridor together just as the east wing ceiling collapsed. Tina grabbed Jaehyun and threw them both through a doorway as tons of stone and steel came crashing down where they'd been standing. Dust filled the air. Screams echoed from every direction. And through the smoke, Madame Cho appeared. She sat in her wheelchair like a throne, surrounded by a dozen guards in full tactical gear, staring at Tina and Jaehyun with those dead black eyes. You disappoint me, Miss Vale, the old woman said calmly. Get used to it. I gave you a chance to save him, and you chose to run instead. Madame Cho shook her head. Foolish. The only foolish thing is thinking you can save someone by destroying them. Sometimes destruction is the only path to freedom. The old woman gestured. Her guards raised their weapons. Take him. Kill her. Jaehyun stepped in front of Tina. No, he said. Madame Cho's expression didn't change. Move aside, Jaehyun. No. I'm trying to save you by turning me into someone else. But I don't want to be someone else. I want to be the person she sees when she looks at me. His voice cracked. Even if that person is broken. You'll die broken. Then I'll die myself. The old woman stared at her grandson for a long, silent moment. Then she raised one hand. Her guards lowered their weapons. Go, Madame Cho said quietly. Jaehyun blinked. What? Go, both of you. There's an emergency exit through the wine cellar. It leads to a tunnel that opens near the lake. Take it. Disappear. And don't ever come back. Grandmother, I spent 30 years trying to free you from your father's programming, and I failed. But perhaps... Her voice wavered slightly. Perhaps I was trying to free you for myself instead of letting you choose freedom on your own terms. Tina stared at her. Why are you doing this? Because my grandson just made the first real choice of his entire life, and I'll be damned if I take that away from him now. Madame Cho turned her wheelchair toward the collapsing ballroom. You have 5 minutes before this building comes down. Use them wisely. Then she was gone, rolling toward the chaos like a general riding into her final battle. Jaehyun grabbed Tina's hand. They ran. Down the service stairs. Through the kitchen where bodies lay bleeding and smoke choked the air. Into the wine cellar where $1,000 bottles shattered under their feet. The tunnel entrance was hidden behind a rack of vintage burgundy. Jaehyun yanked it aside, revealing a steel door with a keypad. He punched in a code. 8 digits, his mother's birthday and death date combined. The door opened. They plunged into darkness. The tunnel was narrow, damp, lit by emergency lights that barely functioned. Water dripped from the ceiling, the walls pressed close. Somewhere above them, the mansion was tearing itself apart. They ran until their lungs screamed and their legs gave out and they couldn't run anymore. The tunnel ended at a rusted grate overlooking the lake. Jaehyun kicked it open. They stumbled out onto rocky shore just as the Cho estate exploded behind them. The blast wave knocked them flat. Fire mushroomed into the sky, turning night into day. Glass and stone rained down across the grounds like a meteor storm. Tina covered Jaehyun's body with her own, feeling shrapnel tear through her already destroyed dress, feeling heat scorch her back. When the world finally stopped ending, they lay tangled together on wet stones, gasping, bleeding, alive. Are you okay? Tina managed. No, Jaehyun said. You? No. Good. At least we're consistent. She started laughing. Couldn't help it. The hysteria bubbled up from somewhere deep and wouldn't stop. Jaehyun joined her. They lay on the shore laughing like lunatics while the mansion burned and sirens wailed in the distance, and everything they'd ever known turned to ash. Then Tina's laughter choked off. Because standing on the rocks above them, silhouetted against the flames, was Elias Kane. Soaked, bleeding, holding a gun. That was beautiful, he said. Really, very touching. But we're not done yet. He raised the weapon. And Tina realized with perfect, crystalline clarity that she had nothing left to fight with. No weapons, no backup, no clever plans. Just her body between the man she loved and the man who wanted them both dead. "Move aside, Nix," Elias said. "Last chance." Tina didn't move. "Your funeral." His finger tightened on the trigger, then his head exploded. The gunshot echoed across the water. Elias collapsed like a puppet with cut strings, blood and brain matter painting the rocks. And standing behind where he'd been, holding a smoking rifle, was Yumi Nakamori, still wearing her wedding dress, still covered in blood, still absolutely terrifying. "You're welcome," she said. Then she collapsed too. Tina scrambled toward her. Yumi had been shot, twice, from the look of it, both in the torso. The wedding dress was soaked red. "Get him out of here," Yumi whispered. "My father's people will clean this up. But you need to disappear, tonight, before the Bratva realizes you survived. You need a hospital." "I'll be fine. This isn't my first gunfight." She pressed something into Tina's palm, a phone. "Contacts, money, passports, everything you need to vanish. Use it." "Why are you helping us?" "Because someone should get a happy ending." Yumi's eyes started closing. "Even if it's not me." Tina wanted to stay. Wanted to make sure the woman who'd just saved her life survived the night. But Jae-hyun was pulling her away toward the water, toward a boat tied at a small dock she hadn't noticed before. They climbed aboard. The engine turned over, and as they pulled away from the burning shore, Tina watched the Cho estate collapse inward like a dying star, taking with it 30 years of violence, power, and the prison that had held Jae-hyun captive since childhood. "Where do we go?" he asked quietly. Tina looked at the phone in her hand, at the possibilities it contained. Then she looked at him. "Anywhere but here." They disappeared into the darkness while Chicago burned behind them, and the only two people who knew they were alive bled out on rocks under a sky full of smoke and sirens and the smell of freedom mixed with ash. The ghost and the king were dead. But Tina Vale and Cho Jae-hyun had just been born, and their story was far from over. The boat ran out of fuel 40 miles from Chicago. They drifted in darkness on Lake Michigan while dawn bled across the horizon like a wound opening. Tina sat in the stern with her arms wrapped around her knees, shivering in the ruined cocktail dress while lake water lapped against the hull. Jae-hyun hunched in the bow, staring at nothing, his tuxedo jacket torn and blood-crusted. Neither of them had spoken in an hour. What was there to say? Behind them, Chicago's skyline glowed soft and golden in the early light, beautiful and untouchable as a postcard. Somewhere in that city, investigators were sifting through the rubble of the Cho estate, counting bodies, asking questions nobody would answer, and somewhere, people were hunting them. The Bratva wouldn't accept failure quietly. They'd lost their inside man, their chance to take over Chicago, and their investment. They'd want blood. The syndicate remnants, whoever survived Madame Cho's final gambit, would want revenge. Even the intelligence agencies that had burned Tina would want her permanently silenced now that she'd become headline news. They were running out of time, fuel, and options. Tina pulled out the phone Yumi had given her. The screen was cracked but functional. She scrolled through the contacts, names she didn't recognize, numbers without context, until she found a file labeled Emergency Protocol. Inside, bank account numbers, routing codes, cryptocurrency wallets containing enough money to disappear forever, and a single address in Rome, safe house, no questions. "Use the name Moretti." "We need to move," Tina said quietly. Jae-hyun didn't respond. "Jae-hyun, I'm listening." "No, you're not. You're drowning." She crawled forward, ignoring the way her body screamed protest. "Look at me." He turned his head slowly. His eyes were empty. "My grandmother is dead," he said. "My home is rubble. Everyone I've ever known is either dead or hunting us. And I still can't feel anything except the conditioning telling me I should go back, that I should surrender, that running is wrong." His voice cracked. "It's still inside me, Tina. After everything, it's still there." "I know." "Then why did we run? Why not just let the surgery happen? Maybe she was right. Maybe destruction was the only way." Tina grabbed his face between her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Because you deserve more than maybe," she said fiercely. "You deserve the chance to figure out who you are when nobody's cutting into your skull or programming your responses. You deserve time, and I'm going to give you that time even if it kills me. It probably will." Then I'll die doing something that matters. Jaehyun stared at her. Then, very slowly, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Nobody deserves anybody. We just get lucky sometimes. They stayed like that while the sun climbed higher and the boat drifted, and somewhere in the distance, a Coast Guard cutter's horn sounded across the water. We need to get off this lake, Tina said, before someone spots us. Jaehyun nodded. He moved to the small motor and started working the manual crank, coaxing the engine into sputtering life. It wouldn't last long, maybe another few miles, but it might be enough to reach shore. Might. Tina was getting really tired of that word. They made landfall in a small town 40 miles south of Milwaukee. The boat's engine died completely as they coasted into a public dock where fishing vessels bobbed in morning light. Nobody was around yet, too early for tourists, too late for commercial fishermen. They climbed onto the dock on shaking legs and stumbled toward the parking lot like refugees from a war zone, which Tina supposed they were. A truck sat in the far corner, old, rusted. Keys in the ignition because apparently people in small Midwestern towns still trusted each other. Tina felt briefly guilty about stealing it. Then she remembered Elias's head exploding and the guilt evaporated. They drove south with no particular destination except away. Jaehyun slumped against the passenger window, unconscious or pretending to be, while Tina white-knuckled the steering wheel and tried to figure out their next move. Rome was an option. But getting to Rome meant passports, airports, security cameras. Dozens of opportunities to get flagged by whatever agencies were hunting them. They needed somewhere closer, somewhere they could disappear while figuring out a long-term plan. Tina pulled over at a gas station outside Rockford and used the phone to access the emergency funds. Yumi had been thorough. Multiple accounts, different currencies, all set up to be accessed anonymously. Within 5 minutes, Tina had transferred enough cash to a burner credit card to keep them alive for months. She filled the tank, bought 2 cups of terrible coffee and a bag of gas station sandwiches, and climbed back into the truck. Jaehyun was awake now, staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. Eat, Tina said, shoving a sandwich at him. Not hungry. Eat anyway, you're going into shock. I'm fine. You're not fine, you're pale, shaking, and you haven't spoken more than 10 words since we left the lake. That's called shock. Now eat the damn sandwich before I shove it down your throat. He took the sandwich. They ate in silence while 18-wheelers roared past, and the morning sun turned everything harsh and unforgiving. Tina's entire body felt like one continuous bruise. Her arms were bandaged with torn pieces of her dress, the cuts from the car crash still bleeding sluggishly. She probably needed stitches, definitely needed antibiotics. But first, they needed somewhere safe. Where are we going? Jaehyun asked finally. I don't know yet. That's not reassuring. I'm fresh out of reassuring. He almost smiled. Almost. Then his phone rang. They both froze. Jaehyun pulled the device from his pocket. His actual phone, the one he'd somehow kept through the explosion and the tunnel and the boat ride. The screen showed an unknown number. Don't answer it, Tina said. He answered it. Hello? A woman's voice crackled through the speaker, weak, pained, but unmistakable. Jaehyun, it's me. Madam Cho. Jaehyun's face went white. You're alive. Barely. Listen carefully. You don't have much time. The Bratva knows you survived. They've put a $10 million bounty on both your heads. Every mercenary, every hitman, every desperate fool with a gun is going to be hunting you. Where are you? In a hospital, under guard. I won't survive the week. Her breathing was labored. But before I die, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago. Grandmother, the surgery was a lie. Silence. What? Jaehyun whispered. There is no surgery. No procedure that can remove your conditioning. I searched for 30 years and never found one. The doctors I hired were actors. The medical facility was a stage. All of it was designed to give you hope long enough for me to eliminate the people who might hurt you after I was gone. Tina felt her stomach drop. Why? Jaehyun's voice was barely audible. Because you needed to believe escape was possible. Without that belief, you would have succeeded in killing yourself eventually, so I created a fiction that kept you alive. Madame Cho coughed, a wet, terrible sound. I'm sorry, child. I spent your entire life trying to save you, and all I did was lie. So I'm trapped. Forever. Yes. Jae-hyun's hand started shaking. The phone slipped from his fingers. Tina caught it. Is there really no way to remove the conditioning? She demanded. Not without killing him or destroying his personality completely. The neural pathways are too integrated. Trying to remove them would be like trying to remove someone's ability to breathe. The old woman paused. But there is one thing you should know, Miss Vale. What? The conditioning only prevents him from leaving the syndicate, from disobeying orders given by family. But the syndicate is gone now. The family is dead, which means the programming has no anchor point anymore. Tina's mind raced. What are you saying? I'm saying that Jae-hyun is free. Not because the conditioning is gone, but because there's nothing left for it to bind him to. The cage still exists, but the cage has no walls. That doesn't make sense. It will. In time. Madame Cho's breathing grew more labored. Take care of him, Miss Vale. He'll try to convince you he's not worth saving. Don't believe him. The line went dead. Tina stared at the phone, then at Jae-hyun. He was crying, silently, tears streaming down his face while his expression remained perfectly blank, like his body was grieving without his permission. I'm still broken, he said. We're all broken. No, you don't understand. The conditioning is still there, which means eventually it'll find something new to latch onto, some new authority figure, some new command structure, and I'll be trapped again. Then we'll deal with it when it happens. Tina, sis. Well, no, I'm done listening to reasons why you can't be saved. Your grandmother spent 30 years trying to fix you from the outside. Maybe it's time someone tried loving you exactly as you are and seeing what happens. He stared at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. That's not how trauma works, he said finally. Maybe not, but it's how love works. And right now, love is all I've got. She started the truck. They drove. 2 days later, they were in a motel outside St. Louis when everything fell apart again. Tina had been careful, paid cash, used fake names, stayed off highways with traffic cameras, but apparently it wasn't enough. She woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps outside their room. Too many footsteps, too coordinated. Professionals. Tina grabbed the gun she'd bought at a pawn shop in Missouri, nothing fancy, just a 9mm with 2 magazines, and moved to the window. 6 men in tactical gear surrounded the motel, 2 more on the roof, infrared sights sweeping the darkness. Mercenaries. She shook Jae-hyun awake. We have to go. Now! He was up instantly, survival instinct overriding exhaustion. They grabbed their meager supplies, the phone, some cash, the gun, and moved toward the bathroom window. Too late. The door exploded inward. Flash bang. The world turned white and silent. Tina felt hands grabbing her, zip ties cutting into her wrists. She fought anyway, driving her elbow into someone's ribs, her heel into someone's knee. But there were too many of them, and they'd done this before. Within seconds, she was down, zip-tied, bleeding from a cut above her eye. Across the room, Jae-hyun was on his knees with 3 guns pointed at his head. A man stepped through the doorway, 50s, gray hair, expensive suit under tactical vest. He looked at Tina and Jae-hyun like they were merchandise. $10 million, he said in Russian-accented English. That's what you're worth, each. The Bratva will pay $20 million total for your corpses. But I'm thinking, he smiled, maybe I can get more if I deliver you alive. Let them decide how you die. Who are you? Tina demanded. Dmitry Volkov. I run extraction operations for the Bratva's North American division, and you two have caused me considerable trouble. He crouched beside her. The burned estate, the dead soldiers, the lost opportunity in Chicago. My employers are very displeased. Good, he backhanded her. Tina's head snapped to the side. Blood filled her mouth. You killed Elias Kane, Volkov continued. He was expensive, trained, useful, and you shot him like a dog. He glanced at Jae-hyun, and you, the great Cho Jae-hyun, the Jade Emperor of Chicago, reduced to running like a coward with his whore. Jae-hyun lunged. They hit him with a stun baton. He collapsed, convulsing. Stop! Tina screamed. Volkov gestured. His men stopped. You care about him, the Russian observed. Interesting. Most assassins don't develop emotional attachments. But then, most assassins don't fall in love with their targets. He stood. Here's what happens next. We're taking you both to a warehouse outside the city. There, we'll record your executions, and send the footage to the Bratva for payment confirmation. It will be slow, painful, educational for anyone else who thinks they can interfere with our operations. You're going to torture us. Extensively. The Bratva specifically requested you suffer. He smiled. But I'll make you an offer. One of you can die quickly, painlessly. A single bullet, lights out. The other endures the full treatment. Your choice. Decide before we reach the warehouse. Tina looked at Jae-hyun. He was already looking at her, and she saw in his eyes exactly what he was thinking. No, she said. Tina, no, we're not doing this. We're not choosing who dies. One of us has to survive. Then we both survive. That's not an option. Then I'm making it an option. Volkov laughed. So noble, so dramatic, but ultimately pointless. You're both dead. The only question is how much you suffer first. He nodded to his men. Load them in the van. We're moving. They dragged Tina and Jae-hyun outside and threw them into the back of a windowless cargo van. The doors slammed shut. Darkness. The engine started. They drove. Tina lay on her side on the metal floor, wrists zip-tied behind her back, trying to breathe through the panic. Across from her, Jae-hyun was doing the same. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what? For dragging you into this. You could have walked away. Should have walked away. But you stayed, and now you're going to die because of me. I stayed because I wanted to. Why? Because I love you. And love makes you do stupid things, like choosing to die beside someone instead of living without them. That's not love. That's suicide. Maybe they're the same thing. He laughed, bitter, broken. We're going to die in a warehouse, he said, tortured by Russians. This is how our story ends. No. Tina, I said no. She shifted, testing the zip ties. They were tight, but not impossible. I've been in worse situations. When? Bangkok, 2019. Captured by human traffickers who planned to sell me to a warlord in Myanmar. I escaped using a broken light bulb and killed 6 men with their own weapons. How? By not giving up. She twisted her wrists, ignoring the pain. The ties are cheap, industrial grade but poorly applied. Give me 5 minutes and I'll have them off. Then what? Then we kill everyone in this van and disappear again. There are 8 armed men out there. I've had worse odds. You're insane. Probably, but I'm also still alive, so clearly it works. She kept working the ties, twisting, pulling, feeling the plastic dig into her wrists until blood made her hands slippery. The pain was irrelevant. Pain was just information, the body telling you something was wrong. She already knew everything was wrong. 3 minutes later, the tie snapped. Her hands were free. Tina immediately went to work on Jae-hyun's bonds. His ties were tighter, professionally done, but she managed to loosen them enough for him to slip out. Now what? He whispered. Now we wait for them to open the doors. When they do, we attack fast and don't stop until everyone's dead, or we are. That's your plan? You have a better one? He was quiet for a moment, then, no. Then shut up and get ready. The van slowed, turned, stopped. The engine cut off. Voices outside. Russian. 3 men, maybe 4. The doors started to open. Light spilled into the darkness. Tina exploded forward. She caught the first man with her elbow across his throat, crushing his windpipe before he could shout. She grabbed his weapon, a submachine gun, and fired into the second man's chest. 3 rounds, center mass. Behind her, Jae-hyun moved like something unleashed. He grabbed the third man's head and twisted sharply. The neck broke with a sound like wood snapping. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Tina dove behind the van's rear wheel, returning fire in short, controlled bursts. 2 more men went down. But there were more, too many. And they had cover. She was going to run out of ammunition before she ran out of targets. Jae-hyun, she shouted. I'm here! He was on the far side of the van, crouched behind a concrete barrier, bleeding from a graze across his shoulder, but alive. We need to move, Tina called. The warehouse! Get inside! They ran. Bullets chased them across broken asphalt, chewing through concrete and metal. Tina felt something hot slice across her thigh, but didn't stop. Stopping was death. They crashed through a rusted door into the warehouse. Inside, darkness, industrial machinery, the smell of oil and decay, and silence. Tina pressed her back against the wall, breathing hard, trying to orient. The warehouse was massive, easily 50,000 square feet of empty space broken up by support columns and abandoned equipment. Perfect for an ambush, terrible for an escape. "How many rounds do you have left?" Jae-hyun whispered. Tina checked the magazine. 6. "I'm out." "Great. Sorry. Don't apologize, just stay close and don't die." They moved deeper into the warehouse, using the columns for cover. Somewhere behind them, the mercenaries were regrouping, coming after them. There was nowhere to run. No exit except the one they'd come through. They were trapped. Tina's mind raced through scenarios. All of them ended with bullets and blood. Then she saw it. A catwalk running along the ceiling, access ladder 30 feet ahead. If they could reach it, get to higher ground, they'd have an advantage. Not much of one, but better than nothing. "There!" she hissed, pointing. Jae-hyun nodded. They ran. Gunfire erupted. Bullets sparked off metal. Tina returned fire blindly, just enough to make the shooters duck. They reached the ladder. Jae-hyun went up first. Tina followed, her wounded legs screaming. They reached the catwalk just as the mercenaries stormed into the warehouse below. Volkov's voice echoed through the space. "You're delaying the inevitable," he called. "There is no escape. Surrender now and I promise the woman dies quickly." Tina didn't answer. She was scanning the warehouse, looking for anything useful. Industrial equipment, oil drums, electrical panels. Then she saw the overhead crane. It hung from ceiling tracks, positioned directly above where the mercenaries were gathering. The control panel was 20 feet away on the catwalk. She looked at Jae-hyun. He'd seen it too. "Can you work a crane?" she whispered. "I grew up in a syndicate. I can work anything." "Then get to that panel. When I say go, drop it on them." "Where will you be?" "Drawing their fire." "That's suicide. Everything we've done for the last week has been suicide. At least this time we're choosing how." She grabbed his face and kissed him hard. "I love you. Don't waste this." Then she was moving, down the catwalk toward the far side of the warehouse, making noise, drawing attention. "Here!" she shouted. "Come get me, you Russian bastards!" It worked. Half the mercenaries broke off, chasing her position. Tina fired her last 6 rounds, dropping 2 more men. Then her gun clicked empty. She threw it at the nearest merc and ran. Behind her, Jae-hyun reached the crane controls. "Now!" Tina screamed. The crane released. 10 tons of industrial steel dropped like God's hammer. The mercenaries saw it too late. They scattered, but the crane caught 3 of them, crushing bone and flesh into the concrete floor. The survivors opened fire wildly. Tina felt bullets whip past her head, one so close it burned her cheek. She dove behind an oil drum and waited for the end. Instead, the warehouse filled with new gunfire, but not aimed at her, aimed at the mercenaries. Tina risked a look. A dozen figures in tactical gear poured through the warehouse entrance. Professional, coordinated, not Bratva. They methodically eliminated the remaining mercenaries with precision that spoke of military training. Within 90 seconds, it was over. Volkov lay dead with 3 bullets through his chest. The warehouse went silent. A figure approached Tina's hiding place. Woman, late 30s, Asian features. She pulled off her helmet. Yumi Nakamori, alive, bandaged, moving stiffly, but alive. "You're late," Tina managed. "Traffic was terrible." Yumi offered her hand. "You okay?" Define okay. "Still breathing?" "Barely." "Then you're okay." Yumi helped her stand. "My father's people have been tracking you since you left Chicago. We knew about the bounty. New mercenaries would come. So we followed and waited for an opening. You used us as bait." "Yes, but you're alive, which is more than you'd be without us." She gestured to her team. "We're extracting you, now, before more hunters arrive." Jae-hyun climbed down from the catwalk. He looked at Yumi like she was a ghost. "You're supposed to be dead," he said. "I got better." She smiled slightly. "Both of you need medical attention. We have a safe house in Colorado, no cameras, no records. You can recover there while we figure out your next move." "What next move?" Tina asked. "We're marked. There's a $20 million bounty on our heads. Every mercenary in the world is hunting us." "Then we remove the bounty." "How?" Yumi's expression went cold. "By making the Bratva wish they'd never heard your names." Tasik. 3 days later, Tina sat in a cabin in the Colorado Rockies while a doctor stitched her wounds and lectured her about infection. The safe house was exactly what Yumi had promised. Isolated, secure, invisible. 20 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by forest and mountains. The kind of place you could disappear into and never be found. Jae-hyun sat across the room, staring into a fireplace, his shoulder bandaged and his eyes distant. He hadn't spoken more than a dozen words since the warehouse. The weight of everything, his grandmother's death, the conditioning revelation, the endless running, had finally caught up with him. He was breaking. Tina could see it. The doctor finished and left them alone. Tina walked over and sat beside Jae-hyun on the floor. "Talk to me," she said. "About what?" "Anything, everything. I don't care. Just talk." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "I keep thinking about what my grandmother said, that the conditioning has no anchor anymore, that I'm technically free." "You are free." "Am I?" "Because it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like I'm still waiting for someone to give me orders, still waiting for the pain to start if I disobey." His hands clenched. What if she was wrong? What if the conditioning finds something new to latch on to? Then we deal with it. How? "I don't know yet, but we will. Together." "You keep saying that, together, like it's simple." "It is simple, not easy, but simple." She took his hand. "I choose you, every day, every moment. That's all together means." Jae-hyun looked at her finally, really looked, and Tina saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Hope, fragile, terrified. But there. "I don't know how to be free," he whispered. "Neither do I, so we'll figure it out as we go." "That's a terrible plan. It's the only plan we have." He almost smiled. The door opened. Yumi walked in, carrying a laptop. "We have a problem," she said. Of course they did. "The Bratva released a statement," Yumi continued. "They're doubling the bounty, 40 million, and they've added a stipulation. Anyone who brings you in alive gets 50 million and a seat at their leadership table." Tina felt her stomach drop. "That changes everything." "Yes, it means we can't wait for this to blow over. We have to act." Yumi set the laptop on the table. On the screen, surveillance photos of a compound in upstate New York. "That's the Bratva's North American headquarters, where their leadership meets, where decisions get made." "You want us to attack it?" Jae-hyun said flatly. "No, I want us to attack it, together. My father's assembled a strike team, 40 operators, best equipment, full tactical support. We're going to walk into that compound, eliminate their leadership, and burn their operations to the ground." "That's insane. So was surviving this last week, but you did it anyway." Yumi's expression was steel. "The only way to end this is to cut off the head. Make the Bratva afraid. Make them understand that you're not prey. You're predators who've decided to bite back." Tina looked at Jae-hyun. He was staring at the screen, at the compound where men were planning their deaths. "When?" he asked. 3 days. We move on Friday at 0300 hours. Yumi turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll be declaring war on one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. Your lives will never be normal again." "They were never going to be normal," Tina said quietly. "Then I guess you're all in." After Yumi left, Tina and Jae-hyun sat in silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. "Are we really doing this?" Jae-hyun asked finally. "Yes." "We could run instead. Take the money. Disappear somewhere. They'll never find us." "They'll always find us. Running is just dying slowly." Tina stood. "I spent 5 years running. I'm done. If they want us dead, they're going to have to work for it." Jae-hyun rose beside her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked like something more than a broken man. He looked dangerous. "Then let's give them a war," he said. 3 days later, they boarded a helicopter bound for New York. Armed, trained, ready. The Ghost and the King were going hunting, and the Bratva was about to learn what happened when you tried to cage wolves who'd already tasted freedom. The war was coming, and it would be written in blood and fire and the screams of men who thought power made them untouchable. They were wrong, and they were about to find out exactly how wrong. The helicopter touched down 3 miles from the Bratva compound at 0245 hours on a Friday morning when the world was still dark, and the only witnesses were stars that didn't care about human violence. Tina stepped onto frozen ground wearing tactical gear that fit like a second skin and carrying weapons that felt more familiar than her own heartbeat. Beside her, Jae-hyun moved with the controlled precision of someone who'd been trained since childhood to operate in darkness. He'd been quiet during the flight. Not the broken silence of before, but something sharper, more focused, like a blade being drawn from its sheath. Yumi gathered the strike team in a clearing surrounded by bare trees, 40 operators, all handpicked from her father's organization. Veterans, killers, people who understood that tonight wasn't about justice or honor, it was about survival. Listen up, Yumi said, her voice cutting through the cold air. The compound has 60 armed personnel, 20 on perimeter patrol, 15 inside the main building, the rest scattered across outbuildings and the motor pool. Our target is the leadership meeting happening in the central structure. 7 men, all of them responsible for the bounty on Tina and Jae-hyun's heads. She pulled up a holographic display showing the compound layout. We hit them in 3 waves. Alpha team takes the perimeter. Bravo secures the outbuildings. Charlie, that's us, goes straight for the leadership. Fast, brutal, no survivors who can retaliate. Her eyes found Tina and Jae-hyun. You two are with me. Stay close, watch your angles. And remember, we're not here to win cleanly. We're here to send a message written in blood. The team dispersed into tactical positions. Tina checked her weapons one final time. 2 pistols. Combat knife. Enough ammunition to start a small war. She could feel her pulse thrumming steady and cold, the way it always did before a kill. The assassin inside her, Nix, the ghost who'd terrified intelligence agencies across 4 continents, had been sleeping for months. Tonight, she woke up. Jae-hyun caught her eye. You ready? No, Tina said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. Good answer. They moved through the forest like shadows learning how to walk. No sound, no wasted movement, just controlled violence waiting for permission to explode. The compound appeared through the trees. A sprawling estate disguised as a private retreat, complete with stone walls, guard towers, and enough security to protect a head of state. Lights blazed from windows. Men walked patrols with rifles slung across their chests. They had no idea what was coming. Alpha team struck first. Suppressed gunfire whispered through the darkness. Guards dropped without screaming. Within 90 seconds, the perimeter was clear. Bravo moved in, securing the outbuildings in a coordinated sweep that left no witnesses. Then it was Charlie's turn. Tina, Jae-hyun, and Yumi led 12 operators toward the main building. They moved fast, using the shadows and the brief chaos of the initial assault to close distance. When they hit the doors, they hit them hard. Breaching charges blew the reinforced entrance apart. Charlie team poured inside like water finding cracks. The Bratva guards inside were good, trained, professional. It didn't matter. Tina put 3 rounds through the first man's chest before he could raise his weapon. Jae-hyun took the second with a knife to the throat, moving with the cold efficiency of someone who'd been trained to kill before he learned to read. The team flowed through the corridors like a machine built for murder. They reached the central conference room in under 2 minutes. 7 men sat around a mahogany table, frozen in the middle of a conversation that would never finish. Expensive suits, expensive watches, the kind of wealth built on suffering and blood. The Bratva leadership. They looked up as Charlie team stormed in. The oldest one, gray hair, eyes like frozen concrete, raised his hand slowly. Wait, he said in heavily accented English. We can negotiate. Yumi shot him in the face. No, she said. We can't. Then all hell broke loose. The leadership dove for weapons hidden beneath the table. Bodyguards appeared from hidden doors. The conference room became a killing floor painted in muzzle flashes and screaming. Tina moved on instinct. 2 shots dropped a bodyguard coming through the left door. She spun and put a knife through another man's kidney, feeling the blade scrape against bone. Hot blood sprayed across her hands. Beside her, Jae-hyun fought with a precision that was beautiful and terrible. He moved like water, flowing around gunfire, redirecting violence back at its source. A guard came at him with a knife. Jae-hyun caught the man's wrist, twisted, and used the momentum to drive the blade into its owner's throat. The man gurgled and fell. Within 30 seconds, it was over. 7 leadership members dead, 4 bodyguards bleeding out on expensive carpet. The conference room looked like an abattoir. Tina stood in the center of the carnage, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't hers. Clear, Yumi reported over the radio. Leadership is down. Begin extraction. They moved back through the compound, faster now, adrenaline burning through their systems. Alpha and Bravo teams had secured the exit routes. The Bratva compound was a smoldering ruin behind them, bodies scattered across grounds that had never seen this much violence. They'd won. But winning, Tina realized as they ran toward the extraction point, didn't feel like she'd expected. It felt empty. They made it back to the safe house by dawn. The strike team dispersed immediately, professionals who understood that clustering after an operation was suicide. Yumi stayed long enough to confirm the Bratva's surviving members had received their message. A video recording of the leadership's execution, delivered anonymously to every major syndicate in North America. The bounty was gone, not because the Bratva forgave them, but because the Bratva no longer existed as a coherent organization. "It's done," Yumi said quietly. She stood in the safe house doorway, still wearing blood-spattered tactical gear. "My father's people are monitoring communications. The remaining Bratva cells are fragmenting, fighting each other for control. They won't have time or resources to hunt you anymore." "What's the cost?" Tina asked. 43 confirmed kills, total destruction of their North American operations, and a power vacuum that's going to ignite gang wars across 6 cities. Yumi met her eyes. "People are going to die because of what we did tonight. Innocents, bystanders, people who had nothing to do with this." "I know. Does that bother you?" Tina thought about it, really thought. "Yes, but not enough to wish we'd done it differently." Yumi nodded slowly. "That's the difference between soldiers and monsters. Soldiers regret the collateral damage. Monsters don't notice it." She turned to leave, then paused. "You two should disappear for a while. Real disappear. New identities, new continent. My father can arrange it." "And then what?" Jae-hyun asked. He sat by the fireplace, staring at his blood-stained hands. "We just live? Pretend the last week didn't happen?" "Yes, that's exactly what you do. Because the alternative is spending the rest of your lives looking over your shoulders, waiting for the next threat." Yumi's expression softened slightly. "You've earned the right to be boring. Use it." After she left, Tina and Jae-hyun sat in silence, watching dawn light creep across the mountains. "I killed 6 people tonight," Jae-hyun said quietly. "I can remember each one, their faces, the sounds they made, everything." "That's good." "What?" "Remembering means you're still human. Monsters don't remember their victims." Tina moved to sit beside him. "Your father trained you to be a weapon, but weapons don't feel guilt. You do, which means you're more than what he made you." "Is that supposed to be comforting?" "It's supposed to be true." He looked at her finally. His eyes were haunted but clear. "What happens now?" "Now we figure out how to live." "I don't know how to do that." "Neither do I. So we'll learn together." Jae-hyun was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The conditioning is still there. I can feel it. Every time I try to make a decision, there's this pressure. This voice telling me I'm making the wrong choice, that I should wait for orders." "What does the voice say about me?" "That you're a threat. That I should eliminate you before you become a liability." He smiled bitterly. "Ironic, considering you're the only reason I'm still alive." "Can you ignore it, the voice?" "So far. But I don't know how long that'll last. What if it gets stronger? What if I wake up one day and can't fight it anymore?" Tina took his hand. "Then I'll fight it for you. And if that doesn't work, we'll figure something else out. But giving up isn't an option. Not after everything we've survived." "You're insane." "Probably. But I'm your kind of insane, so you're stuck with me." For the first time in what felt like years, Jae-hyun laughed. Really laughed. The sound was rusty and broken, but genuine. "Okay," he said. "Okay, we'll try. That's all I'm asking." They sat together as morning turned the mountains gold and the safe house filled with light that felt like forgiveness, even though neither of them deserved it. 3 months later, Tina stood in a kitchen that smelled like burnt coffee and failure. The villa overlooked Lake Como in northern Italy, nestled into terraced hillsides where grapevines grew wild, and the only sounds were birds and wind and the occasional boat motor humming across water. They'd arrived 6 weeks ago under the names Marco and Sofia Moretti, a married couple from Milan who'd bought the property as a retirement investment. Nobody questioned it. Nobody looked too close. In a world that ran on money and indifference, anonymity was easy if you knew how to buy it. Tina poured the burnt coffee down the sink and started over. Cooking, she'd discovered, was harder than killing. Killing had rules, patterns, predictable outcomes. Cooking was chaos disguised as domestic tranquility. She hated it. Also, she was getting better at it. The front door opened. Jaehyun walked in carrying groceries and wearing civilian clothes that still looked wrong on him, like putting a wolf in a sweater. He'd been going to the village market 3 times a week, forcing himself to interact with normal people doing normal things. Exposure therapy, the trauma specialist Yumi had connected them with, called it. Torture, Jihyun called it, but he kept going. "Did you get the tomatoes?" Tina asked. "Yes, and before you ask, I talked to 3 different people. The baker, the vegetable seller, and some old woman who wanted to know why we don't have children yet." "What did you say?" "That we're working on it." He set the groceries on the counter. She seemed satisfied, also mildly scandalized. "I think she thinks we're too young to be married." "We're not married. She doesn't know that." Tina smiled despite herself. "How was it? Really?" Jaehyun was quiet for a moment, unpacking vegetables with careful precision. The voice was there, telling me I was exposed, vulnerable, that I should return to secure territory, but it was quieter, easier to ignore. That's progress. Or the calm before it gets worse. "You're not allowed to catastrophize before noon. House rules." "Since when do we have house rules?" "Since right now. I'm making them up as I go." He almost smiled. The expressions came easier now, though they still looked like they hurt. They'd been living together for 3 months, learning the rhythms of domesticity like a foreign language. Tina had nightmares about Elias, about the car crash, about watching the estate explode. Jaehyun had panic attacks when he tried to make decisions without external input, the conditioning shorting out his autonomy like faulty wiring. But slowly, agonizingly slowly, they were healing, not fixed, healing. There was a difference. "I need to tell you something," Jaehyun said quietly. Tina's hands stilled on the coffee pot. "Okay. I've been having dreams about my father, about the conditioning, and in the dreams, I'm back in the estate, and you're not real. You're just another program, something he created to test my obedience. That's the trauma talking. I know. But what if it's right? What if none of this is real? What if I'm still in Chicago, still trapped, and everything since the explosion is just my brain breaking down?" Tina set down the coffee pot and walked over to him. She took his hand and pressed it against her chest, right over her heart. "Feel that?" she said. "Yes. That's real. I'm real. This is real. Your father is dead. The estate is rubble. And you're standing in a kitchen in Italy arguing about vegetables with a woman who loves you. That's not a program. That's life." Jaehyun's fingers spread across her ribs, feeling her heartbeat. "How do I know you're not lying?" he whispered. "Because if I were lying, I'd be better at cooking." He laughed, sharp and surprised. Then he kissed her. It was slow and careful and tasted like relief. They'd been sleeping in the same bed for months but hadn't been intimate since before the warehouse. Too much trauma. Too much damage. Sex required vulnerability, and vulnerability required trust they hadn't fully rebuilt yet. But now, standing in afternoon light with burnt coffee and groceries scattered across the counter, something shifted. "Upstairs," Tina murmured against his mouth. "The groceries will still be there later." They barely made it to the bedroom. What happened next was messy and imperfect and human in ways that combat never was. Bodies moving together, not with precision, but with need. Jaehyun's hand shaking as he traced the scars across Tina's shoulders. Tina's breath catching when he whispered her name like a question he was afraid to ask. This was what freedom felt like, Tina realized. Not the absence of chains, but choosing to be vulnerable anyway. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets while shadows lengthened across the floor and the lake beyond the windows turned gold. "I'm terrified," Jaehyun said quietly. "Of what?" "That this won't last. That the conditioning will win eventually. That I'll wake up one day and hurt you because some part of my broken brain decides you're a threat. Then I'll stop you." "What if you can't?" "Then we deal with it when it happens. But I'm not leaving, no matter how scared you get. No matter how loud the voice in your head becomes. You're stuck with me." "That's a terrible deal for you." "It's the only deal I want." He pulled her closer. And for a while they just existed together in the quiet. 2 people who'd survived the unsurvivable, learning how to be gentle with each other's damage. 6 months after the Bratva compound burned, Tina discovered she was pregnant. She stared at the test in the bathroom of the villa, watching the positive indicator like it might change if she glared hard enough. This wasn't supposed to happen. They'd been careful. Mostly. Except for that night 3 weeks ago, when careful had seemed less important than being close to another human who understood what survival cost. Stupid, reckless, terrifying. She walked downstairs where Jae-hyun was attempting to make dinner, a skill he'd been working on with the same grim determination he'd once applied to surviving. He looked up when she entered. "You okay?" he asked. "You look pale." "I'm pregnant." The wooden spoon clattered to the floor. Jae-hyun stared at her. "What?" "Pregnant. As in, there's a human growing inside me. As in, we're going to have a baby in approximately 8 months. He sat down heavily. "How?" "The usual way. That night during the storm. When we thought the world was ending and decided we didn't care." "Oh. Yeah. Oh." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Jae-hyun started laughing. Not the broken sound from before, but something genuine and overwhelmed. "We're idiots," he said. "Complete idiots. We can barely take care of ourselves. How are we supposed to raise a child?" "I have absolutely no idea." He looked at her. "Are you scared?" "Terrified." "You?" "Beyond terrified. Into some new category of fear that doesn't have a name yet." He stood and crossed to her, placing a hand gently on her stomach. "But also, happy? Is that allowed?" "I think so. The rules are pretty unclear." "What do we do?" "We figure it out, same as everything else." Tina covered his hand with hers. "I'm keeping it, just so you know. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you." "I know. I wouldn't expect anything less." His expression softened. "A baby. Our baby. That's insane?" "I was going to say miraculous, but insane works too." They stood together in the kitchen while dinner burned on the stove and the future became something tangible growing between them. Fuck. The baby arrived 7.5 months later on a morning when spring was turning into summer and the lake was glass smooth and perfect. Labor was brutal. 18 hours of pain that made gunshot wounds feel like paper cuts. Tina cursed in 4 languages and seriously considered murder when the midwife suggested breathing exercises. But when they finally placed the infant in her arms, tiny and red-faced and screaming with lungs that promised a lifetime of volume, everything else disappeared. "It's a girl," the midwife said unnecessarily. Tina stared down at the baby, at the impossibly small fingers, the dark hair matted against her skull, the eyes that would probably be brown once they settled. "She's perfect," Jae-hyun whispered. He stood beside the bed looking terrified and awed in equal measure. "She's a disaster. Look at her. She's furious." "She gets that from you." "Probably." They named her Elena, after Jae-hyun's mother, the woman who'd tried to save her son and died for it. It felt right. Elena screamed for the first 3 months, screamed through feedings and diaper changes and the endless nights when Tina and Jae-hyun took turns walking her around the villa while questioning every life decision that had led to this moment. But slowly, the screaming stopped. Elena learned to smile, to laugh, to grab at Tina's hair with surprising strength, and Jae-hyun learned how to hold her without looking like he was defusing a bomb. "I think she likes me," he said one evening. Elena was asleep on his chest, drooling onto his shirt. "She's using you for body heat. Don't get cocky." "I'm taking it as a win anyway." Tina watched them together, the broken crime prince and the tiny human who had no idea her father used to be called the Jade Emperor of Chicago, who didn't know her mother was a ghost assassin with 17 confirmed kills, who would grow up thinking her parents were just Marco and Sophia, the nice couple who ran the vineyard and made terrible wine. It was a beautiful lie, and Tina had never told a better one. 2 years after Elena was born, Yumi came to visit. She arrived without warning, appearing at the villa's gate in a sleek black car and designer sunglasses that screamed money. She'd aged since Chicago. Not physically, but in the way people aged when they'd seen too much violence and made too many hard choices. "You look domestic," Yumi said, surveying the villa with an expression somewhere between amusement and horror. "You look dangerous," Tina countered. "I am dangerous, but I'm also your friend. So I brought gifts." She pulled out a folder. "New identities, completely clean. No connections to your old lives, if you want them." "Why would we need new identities?" "We already have new identities, because your current ones are 2 years old, and in our world, 2 years is long enough for people to start asking questions." Yumi set the folder on the table. My father's organization has been monitoring chatter. There are rumors about the Jade Emperor surviving the estate explosion. Nothing concrete, but enough to be dangerous. Tina felt ice settle into her stomach. Who's asking? Syndicate remnants, intelligence agencies, treasure hunters who think there's money hidden somewhere with your name on it. Yumi's expression was grave. You're ghosts, but ghosts have a way of becoming legends, and legends attract attention. What do you suggest? Take the new identities, move to a different country, burn every connection to Italy, start over, again. Jae-hyun appeared in the doorway carrying Elena on his shoulders. The toddler was laughing, grabbing his hair like reins. Start over where? He asked. South America, New Zealand, anywhere you haven't been. Yumi's gaze softened, watching Elena. That's a beautiful child. She deserves to grow up safe. She's growing up safe here. For now. But how long before someone recognizes you? How long before the past catches up? Yumi stood. I'm not saying you have to leave tomorrow. I'm saying have an exit plan, because the world you came from doesn't forget. It just waits. After Yumi left, Tina and Jae-hyun sat on the terrace while Elena played in the grass, chasing butterflies with the single-minded determination of someone who hadn't learned yet that some things couldn't be caught. She's right, Jae-hyun said quietly. We can't stay here forever. I know. But I don't want to run anymore. I'm tired of running. So am I. But I'm more tired of putting Elena in danger. Tina watched their daughter tumble into the grass, laughing. She deserves better than parents who are constantly looking over their shoulders. What do you want to do? Tina thought about it, really thought, about the villa, the vineyard, the quiet life they'd built from ashes and bloodshed, about Elena growing up thinking the world was safe. I want to give her one more year here, she said finally. One more year of normal. Then we disappear. For real this time. New continent, new lives, no connections to anyone or anything we've ever known. Including Yumi? Including Yumi. Jae-hyun nodded slowly. Okay, one more year. Then we burn it all down and start over. Are you okay with that? No. But I'm okay with keeping Elena safe, so it's the same thing. They sat together while the sun set over Lake Como, and Elena caught a butterfly, then immediately released it because she was kind in ways her parents had never learned to be. The year passed like water through fingers. Elena learned to talk, to run, to ask questions about everything with the relentless curiosity of someone discovering the world was full of mysteries. Jae-hyun's nightmares became less frequent, the voice in his head quieter. He'd never be fully free of the conditioning. The neural pathways were too deep, the damage too fundamental. But he'd learned to coexist with it, like living with chronic pain. Some days better than others. Tina stopped carrying a gun everywhere. That felt like progress. On their last night in Italy, they stood on the terrace while Elena slept upstairs, watching stars scatter across the sky like promises nobody could keep. Do you regret it? Jae-hyun asked. Everything that happened. The estate, the running, choosing this life instead of just walking away. Tina thought about the question, about the woman she'd been before him, Nyx, the ghost who'd killed for money and felt nothing, about the broken maid who'd fallen in love with a man who'd hired her to murder him, about the mother she'd become almost by accident. No, she said finally. I regret the people who died. I regret the violence, but I don't regret you, or Elena, or the fact that we're standing here when everyone said we'd be dead. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. It's just not the answer you wanted. Jae-hyun smiled. Fair. What about you? Do you regret it? He was quiet for a long time, then, I regret that my grandmother died thinking she'd failed me. I regret that I'll never know if the surgery would have worked. I regret that Elena will grow up never knowing her family history because it's too dangerous to tell her. He turned to face Tina. But I don't regret you. I don't regret fighting for this. And I don't regret learning that love is something you choose every day, not something that happens to you. That's surprisingly philosophical. I've had time to think. Too much time, apparently. He kissed her, soft and careful. The kind of kiss that tasted like goodbye and hello mixed together. The next morning, they loaded everything they owned into a single car and drove away from the villa without looking back. Ahmad. 6 months later, they lived under different names in a small coastal town in New Zealand where the ocean was cold and perfect, and nobody asked questions about the quiet family who ran a bookshop on the main street. Elena started preschool. Jae-hyun learned how to surf badly. Tina discovered she liked gardening, which was baffling but not unwelcome. They were boring. It was perfect. One evening, while Elena played in the shop's reading corner and rain hammered the windows, an old woman came in looking for a specific book. Mystery novel. Author Tina didn't recognize. She helped the woman find it, rang up the sale, and was handing over the receipt when the woman's eyes fixed on her face. "You look familiar," the old woman said. "Have we met?" Tina's pulse spiked. Every instinct screamed danger. Then she forced a smile. "I don't think so. I just have one of those faces." Maybe." The woman took her book and left. Tina watched through the window as she walked away into the rain. Jae-hyun appeared from the back room, reading Elena a picture book. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just a customer." "You sure? You look tense." "I'm fine." Tina moved to lock the front door. "Just tired." It was probably nothing. An old woman who thought she recognized someone. Happened all the time in small towns where everyone looked familiar after a while. Probably nothing. But that night, Tina slept with a knife under her pillow. Old habits. The next morning, the woman was gone. Nobody in town knew who she was. Just a tourist passing through. Probably nothing. Tina chose to believe that, because the alternative, spending the rest of her life waiting for the past to find them, was no way to live. And she was done letting fear make her choices. 3 years after leaving Italy, on Elena's 5th birthday, they threw a party in the bookshop. Small affair. A few kids from preschool, parents who'd become something like friends. Cake. Balloons. The kind of normalcy that had once seemed impossible. Elena opened presents with the enthusiasm of someone who'd never known scarcity, who thought the world was safe and parents were immortal, and bad things only happened in storybooks. Watching her, Tina felt something crack open in her chest. Not pain. Gratitude. They'd survived. Against every odd. Against every probability. They'd survived and built something beautiful from the wreckage. After the party ended and Elena was asleep upstairs, Tina and Jae-hyun cleaned up the shop in comfortable silence. "She asked me today if we'd ever go back to Italy," Jae-hyun said quietly. "What did you tell her?" "That maybe someday, when she's older, when it's safe." "Think it ever will be? Safe?" "No. But I didn't tell her that." Tina set down the broom. "Do you ever wish we'd made different choices? Gone to the authorities? Tried to work within the system instead of burning everything down?" "Every day. But then I look at Elena and realize she only exists because we made the choices we did. So I stop wishing." He crossed to her. "Do you wish for different choices?" "Sometimes, but not different outcomes." She leaned into him. "We're not good people, Jae-hyun. We've killed. We've destroyed lives. We've left a trail of bodies across 2 continents." "I know. But we're trying to be better. For her. And maybe that's enough." "Is it?" "It has to be. Because it's all we have." They stood together in the empty bookshop while rain drummed against windows, and their daughter slept upstairs dreaming whatever 5-year-olds dreamed about. Monsters, probably. But not the real ones. The real monsters looked like people, wore expensive suits, smiled while they destroyed you. The real monsters were what Tina and Jae-hyun had been, what they'd spent 5 years trying not to become again. Outside, thunder rolled across the ocean. Inside, 2 former killers held each other and chose, one more time, to believe that redemption was possible. Not through grand gestures, but through small moments, through choosing kindness when violence would be easier, through raising a child who would never know how close she'd come to not existing, through surviving, not heroically, not perfectly, just surviving. 10 years after the estate burned, Elena turned 15 and started asking questions her parents couldn't answer. "Why don't we have any family?" she asked one evening over dinner. "Everyone at school has grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. We have nobody." Tina and Jae-hyun exchanged glances. "It's complicated," Tina said carefully. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. That's not fair." "Life isn't fair, sweetheart. You'll learn that eventually." Elena's eyes, her father's eyes, dark and sharp and missing nothing, fixed on Tina with uncomfortable intensity. "You're lying," she said quietly. "You're always lying about who you are, where you're from, why we move every few years. I'm not stupid. I know something's wrong. Jae-hyun set down his fork. Elena, don't. Don't tell me I'm too young to understand. I'm 15. I deserve the truth. The truth, Tina said slowly, is that your father and I made choices before you were born. Choices that put us in danger. And we've spent your entire life trying to keep you safe from the consequences of those choices. What kind of choices? The kind we can't talk about. Why not? Because some truths are heavier than you're ready to carry. Elena stared at them. Then she stood and walked out of the room. After she left, Tina dropped her head into her hands. She's going to figure it out eventually, Jae-hyun said quietly. I know. What do we tell her when she does? The truth, or as much of it as we can without destroying her. Tina looked up. She deserves better than parents who are constantly hiding from the past. She deserves better than parents who were killers. Maybe, but she got us anyway, so we make the best of it. Later that night, Tina found Elena on the roof of their house, staring at stars. Can I sit? Tina asked. Elena shrugged. Tina sat. They were quiet for a long time, then, Your father and I weren't always good people, Tina said carefully. Before you were born, we did things we're not proud of. Hurt people. Made enemies. And those enemies would still hurt us if they could. That's why we move. Why we don't have family. Why we're careful about who we let close. Did you kill people? The question landed like a stone. Tina could lie. Should lie. Protect her daughter from the truth for just a little longer. Instead, she said, Yes. Elena was silent. Then, How many? Enough that I stopped counting. Why? Because I was trained to. Because I was good at it. Because for a long time, I thought that's all I was capable of being. Tina turned to face her daughter. But then I met your father, and he made me want to be something different, something better. And then you came along, and I realized I could be. Not perfect. Not clean. But better than I was. Are you still a killer? I don't know. I haven't killed anyone in 10 years, but if someone threatened you, if someone tried to hurt your father? Tina met Elena's eyes. Yes, I would kill again, without hesitation. Does that make me a monster? I don't know. Me neither. They sat together while stars wheeled overhead and the ocean whispered against rocks below. I'm scared, Elena said finally. Of what? That I'm like you. That there's something wrong with me too. Tina pulled her daughter close. There's nothing wrong with you. You're kind, brave, honest in ways your father and I never learned to be. Whatever damage we carry, it's not yours. How do you know? Because you asked, because you care, because you're already better than we ever were. Tina pressed a kiss to Elena's hair. You're going to be okay, sweetheart. Better than okay. You're going to be extraordinary. Promise? Promise. It was a lie. But it was a lie told with love. And sometimes Tina had learned that was enough. 15 years after the estate burned, Tina stood on a beach in New Zealand watching the sun set, while Elena, now 20, studying medicine, engaged to a kind boy who had no idea his future in-laws had been responsible for a gang war that left 43 people dead, laughed with friends around a bonfire. Jae-hyun appeared beside her, gray threading through his dark hair now, lines carved deeper around his eyes. She's happy, he said. Yeah, we did that. Against all odds, we raised a happy, functional human being. Miracles happen, I guess. He took her hand. Do you ever think about it? Chicago, the estate, everything we lost? Every day. But less than I used to. Tina squeezed his fingers. What about you? The conditioning? Still there. Probably always will be. But it's background noise now, like tinnitus. Annoying but manageable. He looked at her. I never thanked you. For what? For not killing me when you had the chance. For choosing to save me instead. For 15 years of pretending I was worth it. You are worth it. And I wasn't pretending. I know, but it took me a long time to believe it. They stood together while the sun bled into the ocean, and their daughter laughed, and the world kept turning despite everything they'd done to it. We should tell her, Tina said quietly. Elena, the whole truth. Before she gets married, she deserves to know who we really are. She'll hate us. Maybe, but she'll hate us more if she finds out from someone else. Jae-hyun nodded slowly. Okay, We tell her. Together. When she comes home for her birthday. Together, Tina agreed. 2 months later, they sat Elena down in the bookshop after closing and told her everything. About Nyx. About the Jade Emperor. About the conditioning and the estate and the Bratva and every bloody choice that had led to her existence. Elena listened without speaking. When they finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I need time to process this. Take all the time you need, Tina said. Elena stood and walked to the door, stopped, turned back. I don't know if I can forgive you for lying to me for 20 years, she said, but I love you anyway, both of you, even if I don't understand why you did what you did. Then she left. Tina and Jaehyun sat in the empty shop while rain started falling outside. That went better than expected, Jaehyun said. She'll come around, eventually. And if she doesn't, then we live with it, same as everything else. Elena did come around. It took 6 months and a lot of difficult conversations, but she came around. Because love, Tina had learned, was more durable than truth. And sometimes, damaged people raised extraordinary children despite themselves. 25 years after the estate burned, Tina was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. The doctor delivered the news in that careful, practiced way doctors had when they told you your body was betraying you. She had, they said, 18 months. Maybe 2 years if the treatment worked. Tina sat in the examination room afterward, staring at nothing, processing the information like intelligence data. Terminal. Inoperable. Manageable with chemotherapy but not curable. She'd survived assassination attempts, car crashes, explosions, and a gang war. And she was going to die from cells multiplying wrong inside her lungs. The irony was almost funny. Jaehyun took the news quietly, too quietly. That night she found him on the beach, staring at the ocean like it held answers. Don't, Tina said, sitting beside him. Don't what? Don't blame yourself. Don't spiral. Don't decide this is punishment for what we did 25 years ago. How did you know that's what I was thinking? Because I know you, and because I thought the same thing. She took his hand. But it's not punishment. It's just biology. Cells doing what cells do. Random, meaningless, unfair. I'm not ready to lose you. I know. I'm not ready either, but we don't get a choice. She leaned into him. We've had 25 years. Most people like us don't get 25 days, so I'm calling it a win. That's a terrible way to look at it. It's the only way I can look at it without falling apart. Jaehyun pulled her close, and they sat together while the ocean crashed and the stars came out, and Tina counted heartbeats like currency she was running out of. She lasted 18 months, fought every day of it. Chemotherapy, radiation, every experimental treatment Elena could find through her medical connections. It bought time. Not much, but enough. Enough to see Elena's wedding. Enough to meet her grandson, a squirming, red-faced miracle named James, who screamed exactly like his mother had. Enough to sit with Jaehyun on their last night together and say everything that mattered. I'm scared, she whispered. They were in bed. Her body was skeletal now, eaten hollow by disease and treatment, but her mind was still sharp. Of dying? Of leaving you alone. I'll be okay. Liar, he smiled, sad and true. Okay, I'll be a mess, but I'll survive. You taught me how. I didn't teach you anything. You learned in spite of me. That's not true. It is. I was a terrible teacher, violent, reckless, emotionally unavailable. You were perfect. I was a disaster. My favorite disaster, Tina laughed. It turned into coughing. When it passed, she was exhausted. I love you, she said, just in case I forget to say it tomorrow. I love you too, and you won't forget. You never forget anything. My memory's going, the morphine. Then I'll remember for both of us. She fell asleep in his arms and didn't wake up. Eats. Jaehyun lived another 11 years after Tina died. He spent them quietly, running the bookshop, watching Elena's family grow, learning how to exist without the woman who'd saved him from himself. The conditioning never fully left. Some days it was louder than others. Some days he couldn't make simple decisions without panic attacks. But he managed. Because she'd taught him that managing was enough. He died at 73, peacefully in his sleep. Elena found him the next morning in his reading chair with a book open on his lap and a slight smile on his face, like he'd finally figured out the ending. At the funeral, Elena spoke about parents who'd been imperfect and damaged and had tried anyway, who'd given her a childhood free from the violence that had defined their own lives, who'd loved each other with a fierceness that made up for everything they'd broken. She didn't mention the bodies, the syndicates, the estate burning in the night. Those stories died with them. And maybe that was right, because Tina Vale and Cho Jae-hyun weren't the killers anymore. They were the grandparents who'd taught James how to garden, the bookshop owners who'd recommended mysteries on rainy afternoons, the quiet couple who'd chosen love over violence and paid for it every day until there were no days left. They weren't heroes, they weren't monsters, they were just people. Damaged, broken people who'd found each other in the dark and held on until the light came. And in the end, that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.